Chapter 2361. Since you're keeping him by your side, why don't you give him a name? The old man added some firewood as he spoke. Fengjiu thought about it. That's true. We should give him a name. But what should we call him? She looked at the old man and asked. Why are you looking at me? You can think of a name for yourself. I don't know. He glared at her and ignored her. Fengjiu thought for a moment when she heard this, and then she said, then I'll name it Hao. How about Hao, Hao? The old man stroked his beard and said, Hao has the same pronunciation as Hao. It means that the power of the water is boundless. Using it as a name shows that you have high hopes for him. The power of water and fire between heaven and earth was immeasurable. This baby's background aside, now that he was given the name Hao by the Phoenix Star, it was obvious that he would be extraordinary in the future. Feng Hao. The old man glanced at Fengjiu and asked. Feng Hao. Fengjiu was stunned and then chuckled. How is that possible? Of course it's Shenyuan Hao. He's my and Mo's child. She smiled and narrowed her eyes. The old man muttered with a strange expression, You're really thick-skinned. You're not married yet. You said it was your and Mo's child and even gave him the surname Shenyuan Mo's. Look at you. It's as if you're going to marry Shenyuan Mo's. Why? Do you have a problem with that? Fengjiu raised her brows and said, Who else am I going to marry if not him? We're in love with each other. We're just short of a trip to pay our respects to heaven and earth. Didn't I hear that Shenyuan Mo's went overseas for a while? Counting the year you disappeared, it's been at least a year and a half, right? Are you so assured that he won't come back? If he brought back a woman yesterday, I'll see how you'll cry, the old man said sarcastically as if he was deliberately making things difficult for Fengjiu. Fengjiu chuckled. He won't. How do you know? Men are very fickle, especially when their women are not by their side. It is easier for them to be seduced by other women. I advise you to keep a close eye on them. I have lived for so long and have seen a lot of things like this. Fengjiu chuckled, playing with the child's chubby little hand in his arms as he said, Don't worry. If he really betrays me one day, I will sever all ties with him and find another man who is better than him. It's easier said than done, especially when it comes to love. So no matter what you say, this old man won't believe it. The old man waved his hand, his face full of disbelief. What does it matter to me whether you believe me or not? She chuckled and said, Besides, this kind of thing is just chatting with me. It won't happen. Seeing the confidence in her expression and the trust in Shenyuan Mo's in her words, the old man laughed. Yes, yes, yes. That's your business. What does it have to do with us? Not to mention, it's just as you said, we're just chatting. Don't take it seriously, don't take it seriously. Fengjiu didn't continue to talk about this issue with him. She just said, It's getting late. Let's rest here for the night first. We'll leave tomorrow morning. Okay. Chapter 2362. The two of them rested in the forest for a night and ate a roasted chicken. They wrapped up the remaining chicken and put it into their chinkuan bag. The next day, when the sky brightened, they continued their journey and flew into the sky on their magic tools. However, along with the two of them, there was an additional child blinking his pure eyes. With the addition of a child, their journey slowed down. The original 2-day journey took a full 3 days to reach their destination. That evening, because of the clouds and fog, they came down from the sky on their magic tools. Standing in the dense forest where they could barely see their own fingers, Fengjiu asked, Are there really people living here? There's too much fog here. We can't even see the road. As soon as she finished speaking, a gust of night wind blew, and she couldn't help but feel her hair stand on end. At this moment, the little bell at her waist gently rang. Even Hao, who had never cried in her arms, began to cry. Wah wah wah. The child's cries were loud and clear in the forest. Han Yuanzi heard the child crying and came to Fengjiu's side. What's wrong? Why are you crying all of a sudden? Are you hungry again? Fengjiu held the child in one hand and looked around. She said, I'm not hungry again, but there's something dirty around here. She looked at the sky. It was not dark yet, but the aura around her was a little colder. The branches swayed gently and the leaves rubbed against each other, making rustling sounds. At this moment, a mournful and sharp howl spread through the forest. Give me your life. At the same time, she reached out and covered the child's ears. Her sharp gaze swept the surroundings. She saw that there were floating shadows in the fog. They blended in with the thick fog and were difficult to distinguish. Looks like there are quite a lot of dirty things. As the old man spoke, he waved his hands, and a gust of air rushed out from his sleeves, blowing away a lot of the fog in the surroundings. As soon as the fog dispersed, the illusory figures that surrounded them appeared in front of them. Glancing at the figures, Fengjiu hugged the child and said, Old man, be careful. What do you mean? Han Yuanzi was taken aback. He didn't quite understand why she suddenly told him to be careful. Both of them were surrounded. If they had to be careful, they had to be careful together. However, he soon understood what Fengjiu meant. Ah! The phantoms screamed and pounced at the old man with their claws. Even the phantoms around Fengjiu stared at Fengjiu for a while before turning to Master Hunyuan. All of a sudden, a dozen phantoms attacked him, leaving him shocked and confused. Hiss! What was going on? Ah! He didn't pay attention and felt a ghost pass through his body. In an instant, he felt a pain in his head, as if the ghost that passed through his body wanted to take over his body. Old man! What are you doing? Do you want to die? Quickly stabilize your mind. Fengjiu was shocked when she saw this scene. What was this old man doing? He actually lost his mind and let the ghost enter his body. If it did, it would be troublesome. Chapter 2363. However, as soon as that spectre left, the other spectres surrounded Han Yuanzi, causing him to cry out in shock, What's going on? Why are these filthy things only bothering me and not you? I have something on me that they don't dare to approach. Fengjiu looked at the spectres that were bothering Han Yuanzi and said, These things are afraid of yang and fire. Can you deal with them? This old man was just careless. Do you think this old man can't even deal with these filthy things? Watch this. As Han Yuanzi spoke, he turned his hands and the aura in his body surged. With a wave of his hands, an 8 trigrams diagram appeared around him, and even he was inside the diagram. As the 8 trigrams in his hand spun, the spectres screamed and were instantly sucked into the 8 trigrams diagram and disappeared. He withdrew his aura and exhaled lightly. He glanced at Fengjiu and raised his chin slightly, saying proudly, How is it? This old man doesn't make a move, but once I do, I'll definitely scare off all ghosts. Fengjiu's mouth twitched. Yes, you'll scare off all ghosts. With that, she stepped forward. Hey, be careful. This place is very strange. This old man came here once and got lost. I was trapped for several months before I managed to get out. He shouted to Fengjiu as he followed her closely. You're really something. You've been trapped here for several months and you still have the nerve to say that. This old man is reminding you to be careful. As the two of them talked and walked, the fog that had dispersed gradually gathered again, blocking their line of sight. Just as their figures disappeared into the fog, a pair of blood-red eyes suddenly appeared behind them, staring through the fog at the two people who were gradually disappearing into the distance. The two people who were walking forward seemed to have sensed something at the same time. They stopped and looked back at the same time, releasing their divine senses to investigate. However, they didn't find anything. Do you feel like someone is watching us? Han Yuan asked Fengjiu as he stared at the vast expanse of whiteness. I did have such a feeling, but I didn't sense the aura. Now it seems to have disappeared, she said softly. She hugged Hao, who had stopped crying, and patted his back gently with one hand. Be careful, there's really something wrong with this place, the old man said again. I know. Fengjiu agreed and continued to walk forward with him. After walking for a while, she felt that the fog was getting thicker and thicker, to the point where she couldn't even see her fingers in front of her. Suddenly, she heard a rustling sound, like the rustling of leaves, or the sound of something passing through the weeds. When she swept her divine sense in the direction of the sound, she didn't feel anything. The fog in front of her was too thick, and she couldn't see the path beneath her feet. Thus, she raised her hand and flicked her sleeve. A gust of qi gushed out from her sleeve and dispersed some of the fog in front of her. Old man, is the fog in this place always like this? She asked. However, there was no sound beside her, and Hunyuan's aura was also gone. Sensing this, she frowned slightly and looked to her side and behind her. Old man. Chapter 2364. Meanwhile, on the other side, Han Yuanzi was staring at the green-robed figure in front of him and following her. After walking for some distance, he said, Fengjiu, don't you think this place is a little strange? Where did this fog come from? Why is there such a big fog all over this place? I remember it wasn't this foggy when I came here before. The figure in front of him walked slowly as if she didn't hear Han Yuanzi's words. She just quickened her pace. Hey, this old man is talking to you. Why are you walking so fast? He reached out to pull her, but who would have thought that when he pulled her, the person who was walking forward suddenly turned around and pounced at him with a grin like a demonic beast. Ah! The old man was startled and immediately cried out. Some distance away, Fengjiu faintly heard Han Yuanzi's cry of surprise and immediately shouted, Old man, where are you? Her voice was imbued with spirit power, and it spread clearly throughout the area. It also fell into Hunyuan's ears. Over here. She couldn't see him, but she could hear his voice in the fog. Fengjiu walked towards the voice. After walking for some distance, she saw Han Yuanzi running towards her with a frightened expression. I'm here. Fengjiu, who was walking towards him, saw him and her eyes flashed. She looked at the old man running over and asked, Are you okay? I'm fine. I just encountered a few ghosts and I caught them. I rushed back when I heard you call me. As he spoke, the old man's gaze was fixed on the white and soft sleeping Hao in Fengjiu's arms. He couldn't help but swallow and said, You must be tired after carrying him for so long, right? Let me help you carry him. As soon as he finished speaking, he reached out to carry the child in Fengjiu's arms. Yes, you carry him. Be careful. As she spoke, the moment she handed the child over, the Qingfeng sword appeared in her hand and stabbed at the old man. It was so fast that he didn't even have a chance to dodge. He could only watch as the sword pierced through his heart, causing him to let out a shrill scream. Ah! At the same time, the old man's appearance also changed. When Fengjiu pulled out his Qingfeng sword and struck out with his palm, the old man turned into a demonic beast. No, it should be said that he had returned to his original state. The demonic beast still tried to escape after having its heart pierced by the sword. Fengjiu's Qingfeng sword flew out with a swoosh, chopping down from top to bottom. Only the sound of a sharp sword qi could be heard, followed by the sound of an explosion and a scream. The thick smell of blood filled her nose. She protected the baby in her arms with one hand and retracted her sword with the other. She believed that the old man was still in the area, and the voice from before must have been the old man's voice. However, why was there no movement after that voice? It seemed that there was not only a maze formation here, but also a spirit formation. The old man had probably fallen into a spirit formation or a spirit formation. She immediately calmed her heart and carefully scanned the surroundings with her divine sense. At this moment, Han Yuanzi was trapped in the spirit formation again, just as Fengjiu had expected. Seriously, I clearly told you to be careful and not to be trapped in the spirit formation again, but you're trapped again. If that girl knows, she'll definitely laugh at me, he muttered as he tried to walk out of the spirit formation. Chapter 2365. He widened his eyes. Could it be that he had been shouting for a long time and there was no sound? But that wasn't right. There wasn't a soundproof barrier here before. He reached out and waved his hand, breaking the soundproof barrier. Then, he shouted, "Little Feng. Little Feng. Do you hear me? This old man is here. Little Feng." As he shouted, he walked around the array and returned to his original spot. He couldn't help but tug at his beard in annoyance. Who set up this broken array? It's so hard to get out. Fengjiu, who heard his voice, walked around the array and knocked down a tree outside the array. With a bang, the array's light disappeared and the surrounding fog dispersed. The old man's figure walked out happily. I told you I had to bring you along. Look, it's so much easier with you here. Han Yuan said happily. He quickly walked to her and asked, "Oh right, are you okay?" This old man just met a demonic beast again. Fengjiu was speechless when she heard his words. So her use was only to break the array. After hearing his words, she said, "Didn't you say you were following me? How did you disappear all of a sudden? The fog was too thick. I kept following you, but who knew that demonic beast would transform into your appearance? If this old man didn't react fast enough, he would have fallen for it." He patted his chest and said with a frightened expression, "You don't know, but when he saw your face transform into that bloodthirsty demonic beast's ferocious appearance, this old man was scared out of his wits." Hearing this, Fengjiu glanced at him and said, "After I realized you were gone, I looked everywhere for you and also met a demonic beast that had transformed into your appearance." As she said this, she looked at the place with a thoughtful expression. No one knew what she was thinking. "What? You also met it? Then how did you see through it? You're not hurt, are you?" He was shocked. Only then did he look at her and Hao-Er in her arms. That demonic beast probably liked Hao-Er's white and tender skin, so it asked me to give Hao-Er to it. I beat it at its own game and killed it when it was unprepared. Fengjiu said lightly. She paused and glanced at the old man. There are not only spirits here, but also demonic beasts. This place is really not suitable for living in seclusion. So I'm very suspicious. Did you lead me into a ditch? Ah. How is that possible? I don't think so. After all, I came here more than 10 years ago. I remember it very clearly. This place. His voice became softer and softer. In the end, under Fengjiu's gaze, he moved his lips, but no sound came out. Maybe hearing this, Fengjiu sighed softly. I knew you were unreliable. If Shui Junue was really in danger, he probably wouldn't have waited for us to find him. Hearing this, the old man coughed softly and said, "Well, why don't we look for him again? Maybe we can find the way." Chapter 2366. This time, the old man did not lead the way. Instead, Fengjiu walked along the front of the formation, avoiding the dense fog. After walking for half a day in the forest, the two sat down under a tree to rest. Flying on swords is restricted in this area. Otherwise, we could go up to the sky and take a look, the old man said softly. Fengjiu took out some water to drink and fed some to the child before saying, "You said that this is the territory of that clan. Flying is restricted here. Since that's the case, only their people can move freely in this area. We can only walk. If you hadn't led us astray, we probably wouldn't have wandered around here for so long," she said angrily. She said angrily as she put away the water skin. At this moment, she suddenly heard the sound of fighting coming from the forest. Listen. She tugged at his sleeve, indicating for him to listen carefully. The old man saw her expression and listened carefully. When the sound of battle faintly came from the depths of the forest, his eyes lit up. Someone's there. Let's go and take a look. The two of them followed the sound and came to the front. They saw a young man and woman being besieged by more than a dozen monstrous beasts. Feng Jiu glanced at the two of them and motioned to the old man beside her. The old man understood and immediately helped. The young man and woman were in the Golden Core realm. It was difficult for them to deal with more than 10 monsters. Their bodies were covered in wounds and they gradually could not keep up with the monsters. They sent a signal, but the reinforcements did not come. They could not help but feel a trace of despair. However, at that moment, an old man suddenly appeared. He released a powerful chi in an instant. His astonishing battle prowess helped them turn the situation around. The demonic beasts were either dead or had fled. After the danger was over, the two of them couldn't help but express their gratitude. Thank you for saving us, Senior. The two bowed to Hunyuan Zi and looked at him with surprise. Ha ha ha, you're welcome. The old man stroked his beard and smiled. He looked at the wounds on the two and said, You're injured badly. Treat your wounds first. Okay. The two of them agreed and helped each other to bandage their wounds. When they saw one of the men carrying a baby who was looking around with his eyes wide open, they couldn't help but feel strange. Demonic beasts often appear in this area. Why are the two of you here? With a child? The man asked. He felt that the combination of an old man, a young man, and a baby was a little strange. We're here to look for someone. Do the two of you know of a hidden clan in this area? Fengjiu asked the two of them. Hearing this, the two of them were slightly surprised and glanced at them. They didn't want to answer, but when they remembered that the old man had just saved them, they looked at each other and asked, since it's a hidden family clan, it naturally doesn't have any contact with the outside world. Why are the two of you looking for that family clan? To tell you the truth, we brought this child to find his father. Fengjiu said, ignoring the astonished look of the old man beside him. He said with a worried face, the child came here to look for medicine, but who knew that after entering a family clan, he would not be allowed to leave. We were worried that something would happen to him, so we brought the child to look for him. Hearing this, the young man and woman looked at each other, somewhat stunned. Chapter 2367. Do you know how to get to that family? Fengjiu asked again. This. The two of them hesitated. After some hesitation, the woman asked, Is the person you're looking for surnamed Shuo? Shuo Junue. Hearing this, Fengjiu was pleasantly surprised. Yes, that's him. He's the child's father. Have you seen him before? Hearing this, the woman glanced at the man beside her. She paused and said, We've only seen him once from afar. I know he's here to ask for medicine, but... Fengjiu looked worried. But what? But our family head's youngest daughter has taken a liking to him. The family is now preparing for their wedding. The woman said and looked at the child in Fengjiu's arms sympathetically. Hearing this, the old man was stunned. Shuo Junue had made it sound so dangerous and urgent. So it was because someone had taken a liking to him and wanted him to be their son-in-law. To think that he had looked for Fengjiu so urgently to save him. If he had known that the kid was in such a good situation, he would not have bothered to make this trip. Fengjiu's eyes flashed when he heard the woman's words. He really did not expect this. She had been thinking along the way. When the old man had told her about Shuo Junue's request for help, she had used the child as an excuse. She had thought that since the other party had no grudges with Shuo Junue, she would not make things difficult for him on account of the fact that he had such a young child. She did not expect that the other party would not make things difficult for him. It was this young miss from a reclusive family who had taken a liking to Zhuo Junyue. This was interesting. Her eyes flickered and a dark light flashed across her eyes. It was so fast that no one noticed it. "Miss, can we trouble you to bring us over? Let the child meet his father." Fengjiu asked and looked at the woman hopefully. "But it's useless even if you go. Fourth young miss will not let the person she has taken a liking to leave. Moreover, the family head has agreed to this marriage. You won't be able to change anything even if you go." Cough. The old man coughed lightly, glanced at Fengjiu, and then said to the other two, "Actually, we are his family. If he wants to get married, shouldn't we be present?" Hearing this, the woman and the man looked at each other and discussed in low voices. "I don't think it's appropriate to bring them along. If the fourth young miss finds out, she'll definitely vent her anger on us. Don't forget, we're only a branch family. If anything happens to her marriage halfway, I'm afraid the patriarch won't let us off. But they are Zhuo Junyue's relatives, and the child is still so young." The woman couldn't bear it, especially since the old man had saved them before. "That senior's strength is unfathomable. I'm worried that when he goes over, he will cause some trouble in this marriage. Moreover, although our clan rarely interacts with the outside world, we still invited many reclusive clans that we are on good terms with for fourth young lady's wedding. If something goes wrong, I'm afraid." This. The woman hesitated. She wanted to help them, but she didn't know how. Chapter 2368. Seeing this, the two of them thought for a moment and finally agreed, "All right then. We'll take you there as a way to repay Senior for saving our lives, but you can't tell anyone about us." "Don't worry. We won't," the old man said with a smile, not forgetting to pat his chest as a guarantee. Fengjiu also revealed a smile. Just as he was about to follow them, he felt the hand holding the child's butt become wet. He couldn't help but stop walking and take the child out of the red armillary sash. "Ah," he peed again. As she spoke, she called the old man over, Come, help me hold him. I'll change his diaper." She directly stuffed the child into the old man's arms and took out a piece of cloth that could be tied around the child's waist from her chinkuan pouch. The young man and woman at the side stood and watched as Fengjiu helped the child change the cloth and tied it around the child's waist with two straps to secure the cloth's position. Then, he wrapped the child in an old garment and held him in his arms. Seeing a grown man move so skillfully, the two of them couldn't help but feel a little strange. Very few men would do such a thing. Moreover, why did they come to find the child's father? Why didn't the child's mother come? Although they were puzzled, the two of them didn't ask. After they helped the child change the cloth, they led them in the direction of the clan. After about half a day, they led them out of the forest and said to them, "Follow this road and you'll find it. We have to go first." "All right, thank you," Fengjiu said and watched the two of them leave first. Only then did he walk ahead with the old man. In the evening, the two of them finally saw the clan inside. They saw that it wasn't a forest, but a large piece of flat land. However, the manor's walls were so high that they could only vaguely see some roofs from outside. The two of them came to the front and knocked on the door. The two of them were guards who opened the door. After sizing up the old man, Fengjiu, and the child in Fengjiu's arms, they asked, "Who are you two? What brings you here?" Fengjiu restrained her aura and suppressed her strength. The other party could not see the depth of her strength, but the old man did not suppress his strength. Therefore, the two guards did not dare to be too presumptuous. "We are here to look for your patriarch," the old man said as he looked through the open door. It seemed to be quite lively inside. "Do the two of you have an invitation?" the guard asked. "Invitation? What was that?" "We didn't." The old man paused before he could finish his words. He stared at Fengjiu, who had suddenly sealed the two men's acupoints, and asked, "What are you doing?" Aren't we going in? That's the most direct way. Fengjiu said as he walked past the two of them. Seeing this, the old man hurriedly followed and asked, "They're stuck there and can't move. I reckon they'll be discovered soon. Aren't you worried that they'll mobilize the entire manor to look for us? Since we're already here, why should we be afraid of trouble? Let's go. Let's find Zhuo Junyue first." She walked slowly. She had already put away the red armillary sash and carried in her arms. When the old man saw this, he had no choice but to follow her inside. When they entered, some of the servants thought that they were guests of the residence and all of them bowed slightly in greeting. Chapter 2369. The old man saw that she was so magnanimous, but he also walked with his head held high and his chest out. He put one hand behind his back and stroked his beard with the other hand. Just as the two were about to pass by the maid who was curtsying, the old man winked and wanted to say something to Fengjiu, but he heard her voice coming out. "Wait a moment." She stopped and called out to the servant girl who was about to leave. When the servant girl heard her voice, she stopped and turned around to bow. She asked in a warm voice, "What orders does this esteemed guest have? Where is your fourth young Miss fiancée?" she asked. Hearing this, the servant girl was slightly surprised. She paused and glanced at Fengjiu from the corner of her eyes before saying, "The future son-in-law is in the South Flower Courtyard. Lead the way for us. We want to see him," Fengjiu said. "The fourth young miss has ordered that no one is allowed to see the future son-in-law before the wedding." Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed and asked in a different way, "Then how do we get to the South Flower Courtyard?" "Go straight and turn left when you reach a fork in the road. Walk around the fake mountain and you'll reach it," the servant girl replied. She was puzzled. Why did this guest want to see their future son-in-law? Hearing this, Fengjiu and the old man walked over according to the maid's instructions. At this time, the two people at the gate didn't react because the gate had been open all this time, which attracted the attention of the people in the mansion. After an old man unsealed their acupoints and inquired about them, he hurriedly walked into the mansion. In the front courtyard, in the hall, the family head was greeting a few old friends and listening to them talk about the recent events outside. Oh. In that case, this woman known as the ghost doctor can really be called a ghost genius. The Luo family head listened to his old friends and couldn't help but feel curious. There was actually such an outstanding woman and he really wanted to see her. Isn't that so? The ghost doctor Fengjiu's name is very well known outside. Everyone knows who she is. A middle-aged man sitting on the left said with a smile. However, I heard that she had been missing for almost a year. Some people say that she was killed outside. However, it seems that her contracted beast is still alive, so she shouldn't be dead. There's also another rumor. This woman is very likely to be the star of the Phoenix. That's right. The people of the four great immortal sects are very certain of this. It's a pity that we don't know where Fengjiu is. Just as they were talking about the most legendary events outside, the Luo family head saw the steward anxiously walk to his side and whisper a few words in his ear. After hearing those words, he stood up apologetically and said to the masters of the hidden families who had specially come, "I'm really sorry. Something came up at the last minute and I have to deal with it." Hearing this, they all smiled and said, "Brother Luo, you don't need to be polite. Let's take a stroll around the estate first. It's rare for us to come to the Luo estate, so this time, we have to properly admire the Luo estate's most famous 100 medicine forest. It's rare for you all to be so interested." Of course. The Luo family head smiled and said to the old man beside him, "First elder, why don't you accompany them to the 100 medicine forest?" Chapter 2370. They've snuck into the residence. Family head Luo frowned and said with a dark expression, "How dare they? Do they think just anyone can sneak into the Luo family? Get someone to find those two immediately." Yes. The housekeeper replied. Just as he was about to leave, he was called back. Wait. Family head Luo stopped him and said in a low voice, search in secret. Don't alert the guests. Yes. The housekeeper left. On the other side, when Feng Jiu and Master Hunyuan arrived at the South Flower Hall and saw the two guards outside the hall, their expressions changed slightly. After the old man glanced at Feng Jiu, he walked forward first, but before he could get close to the courtyard door, he was blocked. Are you two guests in the wrong place? This is Nanhua Courtyard. We don't receive guests, one of the guards said. That's right. We're here to look for Zhuo Junyue. The old man smiled and said. He copied Fengjiu and suddenly sealed their acupoints. Then, he turned to Fengjiu and said, let's go. Let's go in and take a look. The two entered the courtyard and scanned with their divine senses. They locked onto one of the rooms. When they opened the door, they saw that there was no one outside. When they walked into the room, they found Zhuo Junyue lying on the bed. This kid is lucky. We came all the way here, but he's sleeping here. The old man muttered and patted him. Why aren't you getting up? How long are you going to sleep for? However, Zhuo Junyue didn't react and the two entered or when the old man patted him. The old man couldn't help but be shocked. He hurriedly pulled Fengjiu forward. Come and see what's going on. Why isn't this kid reacting? Fengjiu handed the child to the old man. Then, he went forward to check Zhuo Junyue's pulse. After a while, he withdrew his hand and said, he's fine. It seems like he's just too tired and fell asleep. That's not right. This kid's vigilance has always been good. No matter how tired he is, he wouldn't sleep like a pig. The old man shouted a few more times, but there was still no response. Seeing this, Fengjiu also felt that it was a little strange. However, when she checked his pulse, it was as usual. There was nothing out of the ordinary. Thus, she took out a bottle of medicine and placed it under his nose for him to smell. Not long after, he slowly woke up. Fengjiu saw that he opened his eyes and stared blankly at the top of the bed. She asked, how do you feel? Zhuo Junyue looked at Zhuo Junyue and quickly got up. Hearing this, Fengjiu and Hunyuan were startled. You're here for the wedding banquet? Zhuo Junyue asked. He sat on the bed and looked at the two. His gaze fell on the child in the old man's arms who was blinking at him. He was a little surprised. Where did this child come from? Hearing his words, the two of them were stunned. Now, they could confirm that there was really something wrong with him, and it was a big problem. The two of them ignored him. Instead, they pulled him to a corner and whispered. Chapter 2371. That blockhead Zhuo Junyue said he's getting married? It's really hard to believe, but from what he's saying now, he's still the same person, but his words sound a little strange. Why don't you ask him something else? She looked at the old man and gestured. Okay. The old man handed the child to Fengjiu and walked to the bedside. He looked at Zhuo Junyue, who had already gotten up and put on his clothes, and asked, I'm here to ask you, do you remember who I am? Zhuo Junyue glanced at him with a dark expression. Hunyuanzi. What about her? The old man pointed at Fengjiu. Fengjiu. His expression turned even darker. What was this old man doing? Did he think he had lost his memory? There's nothing wrong with your brain. You still remember us. The old man stroked his beard in deep thought and stared at him. There's nothing wrong with your brain, but why did you say the wrong thing? What did they do to you? Zhuo Junyue was puzzled. He frowned and asked, what do you mean? Did I say something wrong? You said you're getting married. You want us to attend the wedding banquet? Fengjiu raised her eyebrows and asked with a smile on her lips. That's right. I'm getting married. It's tomorrow. He nodded. Seeing the strange smile on her lips, he asked, "Is it wrong? How did you meet the person you're getting married to?" Fengjiu asked with a smile. Well, he tried hard to recall, but his head hurt. It was as if there was a voice in his head repeating the words over and over again, causing him to cry out in pain. Ah! Fengjiu took a step back with the child in her arms. The old man went forward and held him down. All right. Don't shout. We snuck in. Zhuo Junyue gradually calmed down and stopped thinking about it. As smart as he was, he naturally realized that there was something wrong with him. Thus, he looked at Fengjiu and asked, "What's wrong with me? Why can't I remember what the person I'm getting married to looks like? I can't remember how I met her. Just thinking about it gives me a splitting headache." Yes. What's wrong with him? The old man looked at Fengjiu and asked. My memories must have been tampered with. She patted the child in her arms and said slowly, the Luo family is a hidden family, so they naturally have some tricks up their sleeves. It's not surprising that they can tamper with your memories. She knew it. How could he suddenly become so strange? So this was where the problem lay. His memories weren't messed up, but some of them had probably been tampered with. Moreover, the tampering shouldn't have been too long. Otherwise, when they called out to him earlier, he wouldn't have said that he was so tired that he didn't even respond to their calls. She guessed that the memory tampering should have happened 2 days ago. Zhuo Junyue's face turned pale when he heard that. He wouldn't have believed it if someone else had told him that because of the vague memories in his mind. However, he believed what Fengjiu and the old man said because they had no reason to lie to him. Chapter 2372. Blockhead. The old man was shocked and quickly went to support him. Fengjiu narrowed his eyes and frowned. Take off his clothes. Ah. Take off his clothes. Oh, okay. The old man responded and began to take off Zhuo Junyue's clothes. When he reached out to take off his pants, Fengjiu, who was watching from the side, pursed his lips and asked, "Why are you taking off his pants?" The old man was stunned and looked at her in astonishment. Didn't you say you were going to take off his clothes? She was speechless and glanced at the old man. There's no need to take off his pants. As she spoke, she walked forward and placed the child on the bed. Only then did she lift Zhuo Junyue's shirt to check. When she saw a faint red spot on his chest, she did not say anything. The old man beside her gasped in shock. This is the heart-binding curse. Damn it. They actually used such a despicable method. The old man's face was full of anger. His hands were tightly clenched into fists, making cracking sounds. Other than the memory being tampered with, there's also the heart-binding curse. Fengjiu frowned. The memory being tampered with is troublesome. As long as we use hypnotism, we can make him remember everything. But for the heart-binding curse, we either have to find the person who put the curse on him or find Miss Luo. Then help him find the memory that was tampered with first. We'll think of a way to solve the heart-binding curse. As the old man spoke, his face was as black as the bottom of a pot. A dignified reclusive family actually used such a despicable method. How shameless. The hypnotism requires him to wake up. As Fengjiu spoke, he took out a silver needle and inserted it into the acupuncture point on the top of his head. Not long after, he slowly woke up. What's wrong with me? He asked. Just now, he felt that his blood had hurt him, but he did not know why it had happened. What's wrong? Look at you, why are you so handsome for no reason? It's all because of your face. Great, now your memories have been tampered with and you've even been put under the heart-binding curse. I think you're definitely going to get married. The old man snorted softly and said in a bad mood. Zhuo Junyue was startled by his words. He looked down and saw a red spot on his chest. It was the spot where he had felt the tearing pain earlier. Can it be solved? He looked at Fengjiu and asked. Don't worry. It can be cured. As she spoke, she looked at him and said, First, I'll help you break the fake memories they set up for you. Relax for now and don't think about anything. As soon as she finished speaking, she looked at the old man beside her. Old man, guard outside. Before we go out, don't let anyone in to disturb us. Got it. Just as he was about to walk out, he saw that the child was still sleeping on the bed and asked, Do you want me to carry her out? Fengjiu took a look and saw that the child was already asleep on the bed. He said, No need. Seeing this, Han Yuanzi went outside to guard. In the room, Fengjiu waved his hand and set up a soundproof barrier. He took out a pendant from his space and said to Zhuo Junue, Look at this pendant of mine. Relax and don't think about anything. The hypnotism in the room was ongoing. Outside, the residence's guards were searching without alerting the guests in front. When they passed by Nanhua courtyard, they saw that the acupoints of the two people guarding the courtyard had been sealed. Only then did they shout, Quickly report to the family head and head to the courtyard. Chapter 2373. This old man has a belly full of anger and has nowhere to vent it. He stood up, rolled up his sleeves, and said, This old man will teach you a lesson to vent my anger. Capture him. The guard shouted as he rushed towards primordial chaos. Han Yuan did not have a weapon in his hand. He clenched his fists and punched the guards in the stomach. A visible ray of spiritual energy followed the punch. The hidden force was so strong that the guards could not help but bend over and groan with reddened faces. They could not catch their breath for a long time. Ah! Hiss! Grunts and cries of pain rang out one after another. How could those guards be a match for Han Yuanzi? A few of them stepped forward, and soon they were all lying on the ground, howling in pain, unable to get up. How dare you? Where did you come from, madman? How dare you trespass into my Luo residence? A voice filled with pressure was heard. The pressure in the air directly pressed down on Han Yuan, who was in the courtyard. However, with Han Yuan's strength and cultivation, the pressure was useless. He put his hands behind his back and stared at the middle-aged man who came from behind with a large group of people. He asked with a dark face, Are you the head of the Luo family? Patriarch Luo sized up the old man in front of him and saw that there was nothing special about him. However, this old man was not afraid of his coercion. It was clear that his strength was not low. Hence, he took a deep breath and asked slowly, May I know who you are? Why have you come to my Luo residence to cause trouble? Who? The old man snorted, Don't you know who I am? Do you know who Zhuo Junue is? Family head Luo's eyelids twitched. Zhuo Junue. He naturally knew who he was. Zhuo Junue was the husband that his youngest daughter had her eyes on. He planned to marry them tomorrow. Thinking that there were guests in the residence and that the old man's strength was unfathomable, he thought for a moment and said, Why don't we sit down and talk? Talk? What's there to talk about? I just want to ask you one thing. How are you going to settle the matter of you using the heart-binding curse on Zhuo Junue? Han Yuan snorted and asked directly. Family head Luo's heart sank, but he smiled and said, What heart-binding curse? I don't know what you're talking about. Is there a misunderstanding? Junue and my youngest daughter are in love. He begged me again and again before I agreed to the marriage. Ha ha ha. This old man was wondering what kind of people this reclusive Luo family was. I didn't expect them to be cowards who don't dare to admit what they did. Family head Luo Junue's face. Family head Luo's face a lesson. Luo of the Luo residence. Patriarch Luo's expression changed slightly, and the anger in his heart surged. He secretly clenched his fists and said in a deep voice, Don't go too far. Could it be that you think that just because my Luo clan has withdrawn from the world, we can't afford to offend you? Chapter 2374. However, just as Patriarch Luo gave the order and the people behind him were about to attack, the door behind Hun Yuanzi opened with a creak. Zhuo Junue stood by the door and looked outside with a cold expression before walking out. Patriarch Luo. Zhuo Junue's gaze landed on the middle-aged man who was standing with his hands behind his back. I also want to ask, what's with the binding curse on me? Patriarch Luo frowned and stared at Zhuo Junue. On the other side, the fourth young miss of the Luo estate had been discussing the wedding with her two brothers the next day. When she heard what had happened, she cried out in alarm, "What?" As soon as her voice fell, she abandoned her two brothers and rushed to the south flower courtyard. When she arrived outside the courtyard and saw the tense atmosphere, her heart tightened. She walked past the crowd and came to Zhuo Junue's side. "Junue, what's wrong?" However, before she could touch Zhuo Junue, he pushed her away and she stumbled a few steps back. She looked at Zhuo Junue in a daze and muttered, "Junue. What's wrong?" Zhuo Junue looked at her coldly and said without a trace of emotion in his voice, "Fourth young mistress, please respect yourself." When fourth young mistress Luo heard this and saw his distant and cold expression, she ran back to her father. "Father, what's wrong with Junue? Didn't you say that he would remember me as his fiancé when he wakes up? Didn't you say that I'm the only one in his heart? Why is he now?" Patriarch Luo's face darkened when he heard her say this in front of everyone with red eyes. When the two young masters of the Luo family heard this, they were also stunned. They looked at each other with shock in their eyes. What was going on? They had just returned from training outside and were quite happy when they heard about their sister's marriage. However, they did not expect this marriage to be different from what they had imagined. Pfft. Forget it. You kept denying it just now, saying that you don't know about the binding curse and that I'm a crazy old man. Great, now your daughter has admitted it, right? The old man stroked his beard and sneered at the side. She had raised a stupid one. How could such a woman be betrothed to Zhuo Junue? Even if he didn't find it embarrassing, he felt embarrassed for him. "Father, what's going on?" The two young masters who came from behind asked, their gazes landing on their father. "I'll tell you more about it later," Patriarch Luo said in a low voice. He stared at Zhuo Junue and asked in a low voice, "Zhuo Junue, what do you mean? Are you going back on your word now? Don't forget, you were the one who begged me to marry my daughter to you." Ha 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 ha. Before Zhuo Junue could say anything, Hun Yuanzi laughed out loud. "How embarrassing. Even if you don't feel embarrassed, I feel embarrassed for you." Hun Yuanzi paused and glanced at the ashen-faced Patriarch Luo. "Why don't you take a good look at what kind of person my son is? Begging your daughter to marry him? Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue when you talk big?" When the Luo family's fourth young mistress heard this, she couldn't help but get angry. "Who are you? How dare you be so presumptuous in my Luo clan?" The old man snorted. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Fengjiu's voice from behind. "Fourth young mistress Luo." Chapter 2375. She was not bad-looking, but the arrogance in her eyes made her less pleasing to the eye. Although she was beautiful, she was not good enough for Zhuo Junue. Fourth young mistress Luo looked at Fengjiu and saw a young man with a child in his arms. She lifted her chin and asked, "Who are you?" Fengjiu smiled and walked over to Zhuo Junue. She held the child in one hand and little Hao Er's chubby hand in the other. "Junue, tell fourth young mistress Luo who I am." When Zhuo Junue heard this, he couldn't help but turn his head to look at her. He thought to himself, what is she trying to do? When fourth young mistress Luo heard Fengjiu's words, she stared at Fengjiu's face, which was even more beautiful than a woman's, and the child in her arms. Her expression changed and she pointed at her. You're a woman." Fengjiu smiled and looked at the Luo family members who were looking at her in shock. She said slowly, I just think that if you want to use the conjoined hearts curse, you should at least find out about this person's background and see if he is married and has children. Otherwise, if you use the conjoined hearts curse on your own accord, you might end up in a position worse than a concubine. Isn't that a joke? Patriarch Luo's expression was extremely ugly. He stared at Fengjiu, then at the child, and then at Zhuo Junyue's cold face. He felt a mouthful of blood rising to his throat. After all this time, Zhuo Junyue was already married and had children. Was this ridiculously handsome man a woman in disguise? Was the child in her arms their child? His face turned ashen and his body trembled with anger. If this marriage really happened, then wouldn't he, the daughter of the Luo family, only be a concubine? No. This woman could not even be considered a concubine. Did that mean Zhuo Junyue had a concubine in his family? Thinking of this, he only felt his old face burning. His beloved daughter had to be someone else's concubine. She was not even a concubine. Without another word, he turned around and shouted in a deep voice, "First elder." "Father, the first elder is not here." Eldest young Master Luo, who was standing behind him, looked at his furious father and did not ask any more questions. The situation was clear, but he did not expect his father and sister to do this. Get him to remove the conjoined hearts curse. Chase all of them out. Patriarch Luo left after he said that. He flung his sleeves. "Hey, you're leaving just like that?" the old man shouted. He was about to chase after Fengjiu when Fengjiu pulled him back and shook his head. Seeing this, he didn't say anything else. "Master S.S. Eldest Young Master Luo, Young Master Luo, S. Eldest Young Master. SSSSS." The old man stroked his beard and nodded. He narrowed his eyes and said, "However, you don't think that this matter can be settled with just an apology, do you?" Hearing this, the eldest son of the Luo family was stunned. He looked at them and said, "My father and little sister were just confused for a moment. As long as you don't take it to heart, I am willing to prepare a small gift to apologize to you. Remove the conjoined hearts curse first." Eldest young Master Luo scoffed and did not say anything else. Seeing this, the Luo clan's eldest young master instructed the people around him to invite the Grand Elder over. Chapter 2376. The old man glanced at Fengjiu and then looked at Hun Yuanzi. He then looked at Zhuo Junyue and said, "Come with me." As he spoke, he looked at fourth young mistress Luo, who was standing at the side, and said, "Fourth young mistress, come with us." Fengjiu sat down at the stone table in the courtyard with the child in her arms. The old man walked a few steps in the courtyard. Soon, he walked to the room they had entered and looked in through the window. The two young masters of the Luo family, who were still standing in the courtyard, looked at Fengjiu and the child in her arms. They could not help but ask, "How should I address you, young mistress?" If it wasn't for her words earlier, they wouldn't have been able to tell that the handsome man in front of them was a woman. Although she didn't say it explicitly, she should be talking about her, right? Fengjiu held the child in one hand and rested her chin on the table with the other hand. She smiled and looked at the man in front of her. She said, "Who told you that I'm a woman?" Everyone was stunned by her words, especially the two young masters of the Luo family. They looked at her in astonishment and said, Didn't you just say? Just now. Did I say that I'm a woman?" Fengjiu raised her eyebrows. There was a hint of wickedness in her handsome face. It was hard to tell if she was a man or a woman. Eldest young Master Luo looked at Fengjiu and said, "You're not his woman. Then this child?" Fengjiu smiled but didn't say anything else. She saw the door open from the corner of her eye and Zhuo Junyue walked out first. However, his face was paler than when he went in earlier. "You removed it?" Fengjiu looked at him and asked. Zhuo Junyue nodded and pulled open his shirt to reveal his chest. "Yes." "Very good. Now it's time to collect interest." She stood up with the child in her arms and sighed. It's not easy for us to come all the way here. It's not our style to return empty-handed. Hearing this, Han Yuanzi stroked his beard and nodded. Not bad, not bad. We can't return empty-handed. But, what good things are inside? The Luo family is good at growing spiritual herbs. There's a huge herbal field at the back of the mountain. Xue Junue suddenly interjected. When the three siblings of the Luo family heard the three of them discussing in front of them, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Even if they were bandits, they wouldn't dare to discuss things so openly. Were they looking down on them? Eldest young Master Luo gestured to the guards outside to stop the three of them as they walked past them. He walked forward and said to the three of them, "Why don't the three of you leave now?" Feng Jiu looked at Xue Junue. "You haven't gotten the herbs yet, right? Why don't we let young Master Luo use those few flavors as an apology?" "Impossible." Behind them, fourth Miss Luo sternly shouted, "That's impossible. Don't even think about taking a single spiritual herb from us." She glared at Feng Jiu, her eyes full of resentment. She should have thought about it. How could an outstanding person like Xue Junue be unmarried? However, not only was he married, but he even had a child. How hateful. Fourth Miss Luo, shouldn't you be thinking about how to explain to the guests in front of you why your marriage was cancelled? Why are you still standing here? Chapter 2377. You. Fourth young Mistress Luo was furious. She pulled out a whip from her waist and lashed it at Feng Jiu. "Do you think I won't beat you to death right now?" The whip's sharp sound cut through the air, bringing with it the sound of the wind. This sudden scene was unexpected to everyone. Just as the Luo clan's people cried out in alarm and wanted to stop it, they saw that the cyan figure had already dodged with the child in her arms. Ah! A cry of pain was heard. Fourth young Mistress Luo, who was lashing out with the whip, bent her knees and fell down. She tried to stand up, but her legs gave way and she fell down again. Feng Jiu stood aside and looked at Xue Junue and the old man. "Didn't you want to settle the score with Master Luo? Let's go. Let's go." The old man strode out as he spoke. Xue Junue and Feng Jiu followed behind him. Eldest young Master Luo had a bad premonition as he watched them leave. He could not see the three of them clearly, but he could sense that they were dangerous. They were in the Luo family's territory, and there were only three of them with a baby. However, they were not afraid at all. If they were not confident, they would not have dared to do so. "You two, help the young mistress back to the courtyard," he instructed the maidservant beside him. Then, he said to his second brother, "You follow them. I'll discuss this with my father." Thus, one of the brothers went to the main courtyard, while the other followed behind Feng Jiu and the other two. In front of them, Master Luo was apologizing to the people from the reclusive families. "I didn't expect things to turn out this way. I'm sorry for making you come here in vain." "Ha ha ha, Brother Luo, don't say that. Since we're here, we don't plan to leave just like that. We'll stay here for 2 days and drink some wine. We'll let the young people learn from each other." "That's a good idea." "I agree." Another patriarch smiled and said, "We are all secluded clans and rarely contact the outside world. Apart from going out to gain experience, our clan's disciples rarely compete with others. Taking advantage of the fact that the younger generation of our clans are all here, we can learn from each other and give each other pointers." The patriarchs all felt that this suggestion was not bad. Therefore, no one brought up the matter of Patriarch Luo's daughter's marriage being abruptly annulled. After all, he did not explain in detail, so it was not good for them to ask too much. "Then let's go back and tell the juniors to get ready." After saying that, they left first. After sending them out of the main hall, he saw his eldest son rushing over with big strides. Seeing this, he asked, "Have those people been chased out?" He turned around and walked towards the main seat, where he sat down and took a sip of tea. "Father, they are still in the manor," eldest young Master Luo said as he saw his father's face darken. When his father looked at him, he said, "The United Heart curse has been lifted by the first elder." "Father, I don't think the three of them are ordinary people. How can you chase them away so easily? I'm worried that this matter won't be handled well. I'm afraid." "Humph." He snorted coldly and slammed the teacup on the table. With a bang, he stood up and said, "What are you worried about? They sneaked into the Luo residence. How dare they cause trouble here? Now that the United Heart curse has been lifted, what else do they want?" Chapter 2378. Seeing that his father did not speak, he hesitated for a moment, then said, "I heard them say that we have a few herbs here that they need. Since that's the case, why don't we give them those herbs as an apology and let them leave?" "Impossible." Hearing his eldest son's words, the Luo family head shouted in a deep voice, his eyes full of fierceness, "It's impossible for them to take our Luo family's herbs. Since they don't want to leave now, then we'll get someone to chase them away. I don't believe that we'll be afraid of just 3 people here. Father, it's better to avoid trouble. Those 3 people really can't be enemies with them. I'm really afraid that our Luo family will suffer because of this," he said helplessly. "You don't have to worry about this. I'll get someone to chase them away." He paused and called outside. A few guards flashed in from outside and bowed respectfully, "Family head." The Luo family head stood with his hands behind his back. He glanced at the guards and ordered in a deep voice, "Chase those 3 people out of the Luo family's territory. If they dare to resist, teach them a good lesson and let them know the power of our Luo family." "Yes." The guards responded and turned to leave. Fengjiu and the others were heading this way. However, before they could get close to the main courtyard, they were surrounded by a dozen guards. "The family has ordered you to leave immediately." "Leave?" Fengjiu raised his eyebrows slightly and glanced at the guards with a faint smile. "You're letting us leave just like that?" "Sure, call your family head out and let him talk to us in person." Seeing this, the guards made a hand signal, and another 10 or so shadow guards surged out from the surroundings. When those people appeared, they attacked them without saying a word. "You refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Then I'll show you the power of our Luo family." As soon as the voice fell, a sharp sword with a cold glint was drawn. Just as it was about to stab them with a sharp and intimidating aura, it was suppressed by the pressure released by Hunyuan, who was standing at the side. Their bodies stiffened and they stood rooted to the ground, unable to move. They were horrified and looked at primordial chaos in shock. Such a powerful pressure, who exactly was this old man? How dare you attack us? You're overestimating yourselves. The old man coldly snorted, and his pressure enveloped them, causing them to involuntarily kneel down with their legs trembling. "Scram! Go and call your Luo family's patriarch out. This old man wants to know what kind of color he is going to give us." Before the dozen or so guards could make a move, they all knelt down with a plop under the pressure. In the surrounding area, the few disciples of the reclusive families saw this and all of them looked at the old man with inquisitive and astonished gazes. Fengjiu stood quietly at the side with the child in her arms. She didn't need to do anything. She only needed to watch quietly. Initially, she did not plan to do anything to the Luo family. She only wanted him to hand over the herbs as compensation to Zhuo Junue. However, looking at the situation now, she had to teach him a lesson. There are some people that you can't always tolerate. When it was time to make a move, one had to make a move, especially when the other party already had the intention to teach you a lesson. Chapter 2379. The head of the Luo family was shocked when he heard this. He exclaimed, "How is that possible? The strength of the people I sent is one of the best in Luohu. "Father, why don't we talk about Shuajunue? That old man's strength is not something we can deal with. Since the two of them dared to come to our Luo family like this, it can be seen that they are not ordinary people. Moreover, their words and actions have already told us that they are not ordinary people. Let's take advantage of the fact that things have not gotten out of hand and quickly retreat. Otherwise, it will be too late for regrets." Ridiculous. He is just an old man. Do you think that there is no one in the Luo family? Since that is the case, I will meet him personally. He snorted coldly, flung his sleeves, and strode out. Even the eldest young master could not stop him in time. He could only sigh helplessly and catch up with him. Perhaps it was because the head of the Luo family was really angry. The moment he went out, he called out the older generation of the Luo family, as well as a few elders. 20 people walked to the front yard one after another. The guests of the Luo clan, the patriarchs of the few hidden clans, and their disciples also walked over. "Brother Luo, what is going on?" a head of the reclusive family asked. He looked at the scene in front of him with some confusion. These people dare to cause trouble in the Luo family. If we don't teach them a lesson, won't they think that the Luo family is a pushover? That anyone can do whatever they want to us? Hearing this, the heads of the reclusive families looked at each other and did not say anything. Instead, they retreated to the side and watched quietly. As for the disciples of their clans, they were watching from a distance and discussing in low voices. "Oh, it's quite lively here. What is this? Are you trying to bully us with numbers?" the old man said in a mocking tone. He looked at the crowd and finally, his gaze fell on the head of the Luo family. Hearing the old man's words, the people from the Luo family felt a little embarrassed. They were the older generation of the hidden family, and now there were so many people surrounding these three people. Among the three of them, only the old man's strength was unfathomable. The other person had almost become the son-in-law of the Luo clan, but now he wanted to attack them. No matter how one looked at it, it was somewhat unreasonable. Thus, their gazes all turned to the Luo family's family head as they silently questioned him. Patriarch Luo didn't expect that the younger generation of the hidden families would also come, and they were all watching from a distance. Seeing this, he thought about it and hissed at the elder, "Don't say that the Luo clan is bullying you with numbers. You just want those spiritual medicines, don't you? We'll give you a chance. Let's fight one-on-one. Best of 3. As long as you can beat our Luo clan, not to mention those few spirit herbs, you can pick any 10 spirit herbs from our herb garden. Moreover, we'll apologize to you in public." Hearing this, the people of the Luo clan looked at Fengjiu's group of 3 and felt that the patriarch's method of winning 2 out of 3 matches was very good. Even if the old man won, the other 2 would definitely not be as strong as the people of the Luo clan. If the Luo clan won 2 out of the 3 matches, they would naturally win. Chapter 2380. A strange look flashed across Chua Junyue's eyes when he heard that. He glanced at the people from the Luo family, then glanced at the old man, who was stroking his beard, and Fengjiu, who had a playful look on his face. He suddenly felt that he had been here for so long, had been detained, and had almost become the Luo family's son-in-law. Yet, it was not as convenient as the 2 of them. The people from the Luo family knew his level of strength. Indeed, if someone from the Luo family was more powerful than him, he would not have a chance of winning. Therefore, he would definitely be the loser in this best of 3 match. As for the old man and Fengjiu, the former was unfathomable in their eyes, while the latter was probably not regarded as a threat at all. After all, she had never revealed the depth of her strength. In addition, her age was there for all to see. Naturally, no one knew that she was the strongest one. "You said that you want to win a best of 3 match with us." The old man stroked his beard, thinking that he had heard wrongly. "So? You don't dare." Patriarch Luo scoffed and glanced at the 3 of them disdainfully. When the old man heard that, he glanced at him with a strange look, then moved closer to Fengjiu and whispered, "He said that he wants to win a best-of-3 match with us. Why do I think that's a good idea? Especially when he felt like he was pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger." At this moment, he really understood how Fengjiu often felt when he tricked people. At this moment, he could not help but feel eager to try. He could not wait to see the disbelief and shock on their faces after they lost. Fengjiu patted the child in her arms with a smile on the corners of her mouth. She looked at the patriarch of the Luo clan with a dim light in her eyes and said, "I also think this is a good idea. I can accept it." Patriarch Luo's eyes lit up when he heard that. He stared at the three of them, then waved his hand and said in a deep voice, "All right. This is something that all of you have heard, so please be my witness." The masters of the reclusive families looked at each other and said, "All right, let's be our witnesses." The surrounding disciples of the reclusive family clans looked at Fengjiu and the other two like they were watching a good show. In their opinion, this was a competition that they were bound to lose. They really didn't know why the three of them would agree to such an unfair competition. "Then, please come to the training field at the back," the people from the Luo family said as they led the way to the training field. Patriarch Luo, the elders, and the manager discussed at the side while looking at Fengjiu and the other two. "Zhuo Junue isn't a match for the first elder, so we'll leave him to the first elder. Since that old man is stronger than all of us, we'll let one of the managers fight him. There's no need to fight too much. We just have to make sure that he doesn't get injured and can retreat safely." Patriarch Luo said in a low voice, "We won Zhuo Junue's match and lost the old man's match. So, we just have to win the last match with the lady." Upon hearing this, the eldest son of the Luo family asked hesitantly, "Father, is that green-clothed man really a woman?" Chapter 2381. I don't care if they're a man or a woman. Break their limbs when they go up. Teach them a good lesson. Otherwise, they'll really think that the Luo family is easy to bully. Family head Luo scoffed coldly as he glared at Fengjiu and the other two viciously. If they had not suddenly arrived, the Luo family would not have been humiliated. Now that he had a chance to teach them a lesson openly, he would not let it go. Not far away, Fengjiu and the other two viciously glanced at family head Luo when they heard the conversation. Fengjiu carried her child and smiled. "That's right. I want to teach them a lesson too. Otherwise, they'll think that we're easy to bully." "Humph. You'll have to have the ability first." When family head Luo heard Fengjiu's words, he glanced at her coldly and waved his hand to signal for his men to get ready. The venue was ready-made, and the surrounding people were all gathered at the side, discussing in low voices. As Fengjiu and the other two viciously stepped forward, the family heads of the reclusive families asked, "Who do you intend to go first in the first round?" The Luo family members looked at Fengjiu and the other two viciously as if waiting for them to announce their candidate. Fengjiu and the old man looked at each other before their gazes landed on Zhuo Junue, who had a solemn expression on his face. The old man grinned as his wise eyes glowed with excitement. He said mysteriously, "Blockhead, you go first." Zhuo Junue's lips twitched when he saw that both of them were looking at him. The two of them were looking down on him. He would definitely lose if he went up. He felt aggrieved to be looked down on by them. However, he was indeed the weakest among the three of them. Therefore, he sighed silently in his heart and nodded at the two of them. He stepped forward and stepped into the arena. Seeing that Zhuo Junue was the first to fight, Patriarch Luo's eyes shone with determination. He glanced at the great elder and nodded slightly. Then, the great elder stepped forward and came to the center of the training field. The difference in strength between the two of them was more than one level. Even if they did not fight, everyone knew who would win. Therefore, when the crowd saw this scene, their eyes were filled with confusion. The family heads of the reclusive families looked at each other and discussed for a while. One of them stepped forward and said in a low voice that contained spiritual power, "Stop when it comes to fighting. Do not kill each other. The one who steps out of the circle in the arena loses. Now, let's start the first round." The two people in the field cupped their hands and saluted after the word "start," and instantly attacked each other. Even though Zhuge Junyu knew that he could not defeat the head elder of the Luo family, he still fought with all his might. His strength was not bad. Otherwise, he would not have been chosen by the Luo family and the great elder of the Luo family would not have been sent to fight him. In addition, he was not careless in this battle. Although the great elder of the Luo family was ruthless, it would be difficult for him to defeat or injure Zhuge Junyu. Looking at the battle between the two of them, both the Luo family and the reclusive families could not help but acknowledge Zhuge Junyu's strength. Chapter 2382. The battle between the two of them caused the surrounding air to be filled with a powerful spiritual aura and pressure. A few of the patriarchs of the hidden families felt uncomfortable under the powerful pressure and immediately waved their hands to disperse the powerful pressure for them. They looked at each other as the fight became more and more intense. Although Zhuge Junyu was strong, he was not at a disadvantage after a long fight. The great elder of the Luo family was attacking more fiercely, as if he wanted to vent his anger by injuring Zhuge Junyu, just as the master of the Luo family had said. Therefore, the great elder of the Luo family attacked so fiercely that their hearts skipped a beat. The eldest and second young masters of the Luo family couldn't help but worry. It seemed like their father really wanted to teach them a lesson in this competition. Otherwise, the great elder wouldn't have acted so fiercely. However, in their opinion, this was too much. After all, Zhuge Junyu and the others had not done anything unforgivable. If they injured them just to vent their anger, it seemed, they looked at each other and came to their father's side to persuade him. "Father, it's good that the fight is over. Ask the great elder to be merciful. It's better for everyone to be merciful. You don't have to worry about this. I know what to do." The master of the Luo family said in a low voice as he glanced at them warningly. "Father." The first young master wanted to persuade him, but he was pulled aside by the two elders. "Eldest young master, the patriarch has his own ideas. Not only did the marriage fail, but he also caused our Luo family to become a joke. Furthermore, the two of them forced their way into our Luo residence. It is only right that we teach them a lesson." An elder said, indicating for the two of them to stop talking. The first young master sighed and shook his head. He did not say anything else. On the other side, Feng Jiu heard their conversation. She only glanced at eldest young master Luo and looked away indifferently. She looked at Zhuge Junyu and saw that he had stepped back when he dodged the great elder of the Luo family's attack. He spun around and landed outside the ring. Just as the Luo clan's head elder wanted to take advantage of the situation to pursue, he realized that Zhuge Junyu had already fallen outside the circle. At that moment, he was slightly taken aback. He frowned slightly as he glanced at Zhuge Junyu before retreating. However, his expression showed that he was unwilling to admit defeat without injuring Zhuge Junyu. The Luo family master's eyes darkened when he saw this. He glanced at Zhuge Junyu, pursed his lips, and looked away. The first young master of the Luo family sighed in relief. The fourth young mistress of the Luo family, who was hiding nearby, did not come over. Seeing that he was not injured, she heaved a sigh of relief, and her anxious heart finally relaxed. She stared blankly at Zhuge Junyu, who was standing outside the circle with one hand behind his back. She could not help but feel a sense of reluctance and infatuation as she looked at his cold and expressionless face. She had taken a liking to him at first sight. Even among the younger generation of the Luo family, none of them were as outstanding as him. Not to mention the Luo family, even the other families didn't have any young men that could compare to him. Chapter 2383. The heads of the reclusive families looked at each other, then stepped forward and announced, "The Luo family wins the first round." Once the voice, which contained the aura of spiritual energy, was heard clearly by the people around. When the people of the Luo family heard it, they all smiled, as they were very satisfied with the result. The second round begins. Both sides, send out your people. When the second round began, Han Yuanzi squinted his eyes and smiled at Fengjiu, saying, "I'll go and meet them." After he finished speaking, his figure flashed, and he appeared in the arena. Seeing that it was the old man, the people of the Luo family looked at each other, then sent out a middle-aged man. When they saw that the Luo family had sent out a middle-aged man, whose strength was at the early stage of the fairy realm, the eyes of the people of the reclusive families flashed. They knew that the Luo family intended to admit defeat in the second round, as they could not win against the old man, so they could only send out a random person to fight. However, even if they lost the second round, it would only be a draw. When it came to the third round and the final battle, they could still turn the situation around and win. After the announcement of the start of the third round, the old man in the arena instantly made his move. His body moved as fast as lightning, and before the middle-aged man could react, he was already behind him. He directly grabbed the middle-aged man's shoulder with one hand, then put his other hand on the middle-aged man's arm and twisted it. The crisp sound of bones breaking could be heard, and at the same time, the middle-aged man's cry of surprise and pain could be heard. Ah! This scene came too suddenly. They knew that the old man's strength was unfathomable, but they did not expect him to be so fast. Moreover, he had twisted the middle-aged man's arm in one move. The sound of bones cracking was crisp and clear. Even if they weren't injured, it still made their scalps go numb and their hearts clench. This was especially so for the people of the Luo family. When they saw this scene, their faces were as black as charcoal, and their gazes fell on the old man like knives. At this time, they all felt that the old man had gone too far, breaking their man's arm in one move. However, they did not expect that in the previous round, the great elder had already attacked ruthlessly, and every move was close to being fatal. There was almost no need for a fight to determine the winner of this round. However, the old man did not stop there. He did not even give the middle-aged man a chance to admit defeat. He grabbed the middle-aged man's neck from behind, and when everyone thought that he was going to kill the middle-aged man, they saw him twist the middle-aged man's feet off the ground. In the next moment, he raised his leg and kicked the middle-aged man's knee. Crack! Hiss! Ah! Another bone-cracking sound rang out, accompanied by a heart-wrenching scream. A dignified fairy realm cultivator was completely powerless against the old man, and could only be beaten and abused. When the surrounding people saw this, they couldn't help but gasp in shock. "Get out!" The old man grabbed him by the shoulder and threw him out of the circle. When the people of the Luo family saw this, they quickly rushed forward and caught the middle-aged man with a pale face. "You can't even withstand a single blow." The old man snorted coldly, and his gaze was filled with disdain as he looked at the head of the Luo family. It was as if he was saying, "Look at the people of the Luo family. None of them are capable." Chapter 2384. As if sensing his gaze, Fengjiu, who was carrying the child, glanced indifferently at the Luo family head. When she saw that he had averted his gaze and was looking forward, she curled her lips and laughed silently. This was just the beginning, and he was already anxious. No one had expected the second round to end so quickly, and it was an overwhelming victory. When the crowd saw that the middle-aged man from the Luo family had his arms and legs broken, they all quieted down and did not make a single sound. When they saw the middle-aged man's broken arms and legs, the crowd had a strange expression, and they could not help but recall what the Luo family head had said to the Luo family. However, no one had expected that before the Luo family could even injure their opponent, they had already suffered heavy losses, and a fairy realm cultivator's arms and legs had been broken just like that. After calming down, the few family heads of the hidden families looked at each other and nodded slightly. Then, they said, the Luo family has lost the second round. When their voices reached the ears of the Luo family members, they had a very different feeling. Because of this, their gazes fell on the green-robed man who was carrying the child. In their opinion, this person was too weak to even stand up to a gust of wind and would not be able to withstand a single blow. Any one of them could easily defeat him. Since the old man had injured their man to such an extent, this young man was probably going to be in trouble in this round. The old man flicked his sleeves and walked back to Fengjiu's side. As he stroked his beard, he shook his head and said to Fengjiu, "These people are too weak. I haven't even done anything, and they've already lost. Sigh. With my strength and status, it's really embarrassing for me to fight with such a person." When he heard this, the Luo family head was so angry that he gritted his teeth. The strength of a fairy realm cultivator was too weak. He was looking down on the Luo family. Now, it's a tie. The final round will determine the winner and loser, the family head of the hidden family said, and let them compete in the final round. The child in Fengjiu's arms had already woken up. At this moment, he was blinking his beautiful eyes and looking at her. He did not cry or make a fuss, and was very obedient. "I'll carry him," the old man said and pointed at the child in her arms. Fengjiu replied and handed the child to him. "Don't let the pressure around him hurt. I know. Who do you think I am? You don't even know this." He waved his hand to reassure her. Thus, Fengjiu stepped forward and looked at the people from the Luo family. When she saw the patriarch of the Luo clan instructing one of them to come out and fight, she couldn't help but narrow her eyes and reveal a smile. Her clear and unhurried voice carried a trace of laziness as it spread out unhurriedly. "I think it's best if the Luo family's patriarch comes out for this final battle." Hearing that, everyone was stunned. They didn't expect Fengjiu to say that. When the people of the Luo family heard this, their eyes were filled with disdain. One of them shouted, "You think you can make our patriarch take action? You're overestimating yourself." Fengjiu smirked. Overconfident? Her clear eyes fell on the patriarch of the Luo family, and she said unhurriedly, "Could it be that as the patriarch of the Luo family, you don't even dare to accept my challenge?" Hearing that, the patriarch of the Luo family's face darkened. His hands, which were clenched behind his back, were tightly clenched into fists. Cracking sounds could be heard as if he was angry. Chapter 2385. Regret? Fengjiu raised his chin slightly, and his eyebrows were full of confidence. "I never do things that I regret." "Fine. Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish," Patriarch Luo said with a gloomy face. He waved his hand and signaled for his clansmen to step down. Then, he stepped forward and stood in front of Fengjiu. Everyone's eyes flickered when they saw this scene. Their eyes were filled with interest. At this moment, they could not help but be curious about the strength of the man in green. If he was not 100% confident, how would he dare to challenge the patriarch of the Luo family? Moreover, Chua Junhua and the old man only watched quietly and did not stop him. It seemed that the two of them trusted him very much. If that was the case, how terrifying was this man's strength? To be able to conceal his true strength in front of so many people, it was obvious that he was stronger than all of them. However, his bone age showed that he was only a young man in his 20s. Did he really have such terrifying strength? The patriarchs of the reclusive families looked at each other and thought to themselves. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees the game better than the player. They could see clearly that this young man was not easy to deal with. However, Patriarch Luo did not see this clearly. Some of them shook their heads while others sighed. In the end, they said, "The third round, begin." No matter who won or lost, there had to be a result. Let's just wait and see. Perhaps, they were overthinking things. However, as soon as they finished speaking, Patriarch Luo put one hand behind his back and looked sharply at Fengjiu. Then, he said in a low and contemptuous voice, "I only need one hand to deal with someone like you." As soon as he finished speaking, spiritual energy surged from his hand. Then, he charged toward Fengjiu and struck out with his palm. His momentum was so swift that he was not much slower than Hunyuan Zi in the previous round. As soon as he made his move, the patriarchs of the reclusive families gasped and exclaimed, "Brother Luo has reached the intermediate stage of the celestial sage stage." With such strength against that young man, even if he only used one hand, he would be able to beat him to a pulp. It seemed that their previous worries were unnecessary. They shifted their gazes towards the young man who was quietly standing there without moving. They saw that he was actually not alarmed or fearful in the face of an expert like the head of the Luo family. Moreover, there was a faint mocking smile on his face. Seeing the expression on the young man's face, the few of them could not help but feel somewhat puzzled. It was only when the Luo family's patriarch's palm strike was right in front of the young man's eyes that their hearts were slightly raised for him that they saw him speak in a neither hurried nor slow manner. "You want to defeat me with one hand? You might be overconfident." Fengjiu's soft voice carried a trace of laziness. She looked at the palm that was coming towards her and gently shifted her feet. Her figure flashed like a ghost, and in the blink of an eye, she had already arrived behind Patriarch Luo while avoiding his attack. Then, she lifted her leg and kicked him effortlessly. Yes. The knee of his hind leg was unexpectedly kicked, and the force of the kick caused his knee to involuntarily bend down. His entire body was thrown forward in a slightly awkward manner. Chapter 2386. Let's not talk about using only one hand. If you don't use your full strength, I reckon you'll lose miserably. As soon as she finished speaking, her figure shot out like a bolt of lightning. Her speed was so fast that the people around her could not see her figure or her movements clearly. With the previous kick due to his carelessness, Patriarch Luo became vigilant and no longer underestimated his opponent. He stared at the figure that was coming towards him. Just as he was about to make a move, he saw the figure that was originally a few meters away flashing past him. He didn't know when the figure had already arrived in front of him. The figure kicked him from the bottom up and hit his chin, causing his entire body to flip over. Hiss! Ah! Patriarch Luo gasped in pain. The crowd watched as he was sent flying. Just as he was about to fall out of the circle and reach the line of defeat, the green figure flashed forward and kicked him in the abdomen, sending him flying towards the center of the circle. Patriarch Luo's blood-curdling scream rang out in the arena. When the crowd saw him fall from the air and sprawled on the ground, they could not help but gasp in shock. They looked at the young man who was standing with his hands behind his back in disbelief. How is this possible? Patriarch Luo is a mid-level celestial saint. How can he be so powerless in front of this young man? He can't even dodge his attack. Could it be that this young man is stronger than Patriarch Luo? Everyone from the Luo family was stunned when they saw their patriarch being beaten up by the man in green to the point where he could not even fight back. They stared at the scene in astonishment. They could not believe that their patriarch was no match for the man in green. In the entire arena, only the old man, Zhuo Junyue, remained calm and indifferent. It was as if he already knew that this would happen and was not surprised at all. Fengjiu pursed her lips as she looked at Patriarch Luo, who was powerless to fight back. She felt a little bored. With her current strength, she could crush him with just her spiritual force. Attacking a mid-level celestial saint was not enough to arouse her fighting spirit. However, she could not stand Patriarch Luo's character. Not only did he capture Zhuo Junyue and cast the heart-binding curse on him, he even tampered with his memories. This was really disgraceful. In the end, he felt embarrassed and wanted to break the three of their limbs. Since that was the case, she naturally had to return the favor. A serene light flashed across her eyes as the corners of her lips curled into a devilish smile. Her gaze fell upon Patriarch Luo, who was staring at her in alarm. Suddenly, her figure flashed and she appeared behind him in an instant. At the same time, her hand clasped onto his shoulder. "Patriarch Luo, let me return the favor. Otherwise, it would be too disrespectful." An evil yet gentle voice sounded behind Patriarch Luo, causing his expression to change. It was as if he was being stared at by a poisonous snake or a ferocious beast. His body trembled, and he could not help but feel fear. What do you want?" Patriarch Luo's admit defeat, Patriarch Luo's, Patriarchs, Luo of the of ones of A's of them. As soon as she finished speaking, she moved her hand up and down, and the bones in Patriarch Luo's shoulder and arm started to make cracking sounds, as if the bones were being crushed. In just a breath's time, Patriarch Luo's hand fell limply to the ground as if it didn't have any bones in it. Chapter 2387. However, it was not just Lu Luo's hand. Even his other hand was hanging limply by his side. It all happened so quickly that no one could stop it or react in time. "Father!" Eldest young Master Luo exclaimed. He was the first to react and rushed forward. However, he was hit by a small stone and was rooted to the spot. "It's not over yet. What are you going to do?" The old man's cold voice rang out. He glanced at eldest young Master Luo with the child in his arms and then looked away. He then swept his gaze across the rest of the Luo family with a warning look in his eyes. Perhaps it was because of Fengzhou's strength or the old man's warning look, but no one from the Luo family dared to step forward. They only looked at their patriarch, whose hands were hanging limply by his side, with their mouths slightly agape and their bodies trembling. What was going on? What happened to their patriarch's hands? When Fengzhou dragged Patriarch Luo out of the circle by his collar, she walked step by step toward Patriarch Luo, who was lying on the ground outside the circle. She looked at Patriarch Luo's face, which was contorted in pain, and said in a lazy voice. "Patriarch Luo, you've lost. Your Luo family has lost. You have to honor your words." Patriarch Luo was lying on the ground. He could not get up due to the lack of strength in his hands. He could only look at the young man who was standing next to him and speaking to him in a condescending manner. At this moment, he felt ashamed and resentful. He had never thought that he would lose to a young man one day. Moreover, he had lost so thoroughly and pathetically in front of so many people. Father. Patriarch. At this moment, the people from the Luo family rushed over and helped him up from the ground. The elders from the Luo family were speechless when they saw the young man in front of them. Who would have thought that a young man whom they had never taken seriously would defeat their patriarch and even injure him to this extent? Now that their Luo clan had lost, they had to apologize to them in front of everyone and give them the herbs they needed. They could even pick any 10 herbs they wanted from the Luo clan's 100 medicine garden. Just thinking about it made them feel unwilling. However, the Luo family's strength was not as good as theirs. They had to honor their words in front of the other reclusive families. At this moment, they felt that they had suffered a double loss. If they had known this would happen, they would have given them the herbs earlier. The few patriarchs from the reclusive families walked over and asked Fengzhou, "Sir, what happened to Patriarch Luo's hands?" Fengzhou glanced at them and said, "Do you still need to ask me about something so obvious?" When they heard this, their hearts skipped a beat. Patriarch Luo's hands were crippled. Their eyes flickered when they thought of this. Even if he was from a reclusive family, as the patriarch of a family, even if his strength had reached the intermediate immortal saint realm, he would still have to step down if his hands were crippled. Moreover, if his hands were not healed, the combat strength of the Luo family would be weakened. Without an intermediate immortal saint expert, the decline of the family was imaginable. Chapter 2388. May I know how to address you? An aged yet dignified voice came from nearby. When they heard that voice, the eyes of the Luo family's people lit up. They all turned around and knelt down towards the direction of the voice as they spoke at the same time. Greetings, ancestor. As it turned out, when they saw that the situation was not good, a family elder ran to invite the Luo family's ancestor. The Luo family's ancestor, who originally did not think much of it, came out to take a look. When he saw that the Luo family's master's hands were crippled, his face could not help but sink. However, when his gaze landed on the green-clothed young man, his face could not help but become serious. With his strength and cultivation, he actually could not see through the young man's strength and cultivation. It was no wonder that the Luo family's master would lose to such a young man. Ancestor. When the Luo family's master saw the ancestor slowly walking over, he went forward with the support of the crowd and knelt down in shame. Ancestor. Just as he was about to speak, he was stopped by the ancestor who raised his hand. When the other hidden family's masters saw that even the Luo family's ancestor had come out, they could not help but look at each other. Only then did they go forward and clasp their hands in respect before retreating to the side. However, the Luo family's ancestor's gaze swept past the others and landed on Fengjiu. He saw that she was standing there neither arrogantly nor humbly. Her green clothes were simple and unremarkable, but she was emitting a noble temperament and the aura of someone who had been in a high position for a long time. With just a glance, he did not dare to treat her as an ordinary cultivator. I am the Luo family's ancestor. I have been in seclusion in the back mountain for a long time and have not cared about the family's matters for many years. What did you do to offend the Luo family's master to the extent that you personally crippled his hands? Feng Jiu also looked at the old man who was slowly walking over when the people from the Luo family turned around and knelt down. She sized him up without batting an eyelid. Now that she heard his words, she chuckled and asked, "So the people from the Luo family who went to invite you didn't tell you about it?" She looked mockingly at the clansman behind the Luo family's ancestor and slowly said, "If you don't, I don't mind saying it again. After all, only your Luo family will be humiliated in the end. It has nothing to do with us." Hearing this, the patriarch of the Luo family frowned. He glanced at the patriarch of the Luo family, who was standing stiffly in front of him. Then, he looked at the Luo family members who had their heads lowered. Looking at the situation, how could he not know that the Luo family was in the wrong? Even if my Luo family is being unreasonable, it is still too much for your highness to cripple his hands. Furthermore, a country has its laws, and a family has its rules. If my Luo family's family head has truly mishandled this matter, this old man, as the Luo family's ancestor, will naturally not be biased. Ha 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 ha. Old man Luo, we haven't seen each other for so many years. Your words are quite pleasing to my ears. It's a pity that you don't care about what's going on outside. Otherwise, things wouldn't have turned out like this. Han Yuanzi handed the child to Zhou Junyue and walked forward. When the Luo family's patriarch heard the laughter, he was stunned for a moment. He felt that the voice was somewhat familiar. When he looked in the direction of the laughter and saw the person walking over, his expression changed slightly. He exclaimed in a low voice, "Why is it you?" Chapter 2389. Seeing this, everyone could not help but be slightly stunned. The Luo family patriarch knew that old man. Moreover, why did the Luo family patriarch look as if he was afraid of him like a venomous snake? Feng Jiu raised her eyebrows when she saw this. She was a little surprised. Han Yuanzi came to Feng Jiu's side and looked at the vigilant Luo family patriarch. He stroked his beard and smiled. "I didn't expect you to be the Luo family patriarch. If I had known, I wouldn't have gone through so much trouble." He only knew that the old man's surname was Luo, but who knew that he was the Luo family patriarch? He looked at Han Yuanzi, then at Feng Jiu, and finally at the Luo family patriarch. He shouted angrily, "How did you provoke this old god of plague? Tell me the truth." He was angry. Of all people to provoke, he had to provoke Luo family patriarch. Why did he have to provoke this Hunyuan? Was this old thing someone that could be provoked so easily? Decades ago, those who met him could only admit that they were unlucky. Who dared to fight with him? He had not seen this old god of plague for so many years, but who knew that he would meet him in the Luo family's territory today? If he had known it was him, he would not have come out. "You old man, what nonsense are you talking about? What god of plague? You should be more polite with your words." Hun Yuanzi snorted, as if he did not like the words, "old god of plague." Everyone from the Luo family and those from the reclusive families were startled by this scene, and their eyes fell on the Luo family patriarch. The Luo family patriarch's heart sank when he heard his patriarch's words. He looked up at the patriarch and saw that he was slightly angry. The Luo family patriarch was glaring at him, and he could not say anything. "Great elder. You tell me." The Luo family patriarch shouted and looked at the great elder. The great elder's heart skipped a beat. He glanced at the old ancestor of the Luo family and then at the head of the Luo family. Finally, he walked up to the old ancestor of the Luo family and explained the matter in a low voice. After listening to the first elder's explanation, the Luo family's ancestor's face darkened. His sharp and dignified eyes were filled with disappointment as he looked at the Luo family head. He shook his head and said in a deep voice, "From today onwards." He was stripped of his position as the head of the family. His eldest son, Luo Yisheng, would succeed him as the patriarch. "Someone come. Take him away and let him face the cliff to reflect on his mistakes." As soon as these words were spoken, the Luo family went into an uproar. They all widened their eyes in disbelief. The Luo family head also raised his head to look at the Luo family ancestor in astonishment. His eyes were filled with disbelief. He was still so young, how could he step down from the position of patriarch just like that? And in such a way? The eldest young master of the Luo family, Luo Yisheng, was stunned when he heard the patriarch's words. He hurriedly said, "Patriarch, Yisheng is too young to take on such an important task. Although my father was at fault, he has already been punished. Both of his hands are seriously injured. Please forgive him." "That's right, Patriarch. Now that Patriarch's hands are seriously injured by that young master, even if it's our fault, this matter should be settled. Please forgive him." The people of the Luo family pleaded for mercy. After all, Patriarch Luo's strength was at the intermediate immortal saint realm. He was the only one who could suppress the people below him. Although Luo Yisheng was outstanding, he was not as strong as his father. For the sake of the Luo family, they could only beg the patriarch to forgive him. Humph. Chapter 2390. Everyone could not help but look at Fengjiu and Hun Yuanzi when they saw this. The first young master of the Luo family came before Hun Yuanzi and was about to plead. "Senior." However, he was stopped by Hun Yuanzi. "I don't care about your family matters. Don't tell me, don't tell me." He waved his hand and looked at the Luo family patriarch. "Old man Luo, since you're here, you should quickly settle this matter. We don't have the time to stay here." The Luo family patriarch's face darkened when he heard this. He glanced at the stunned members of the Luo family and said, "What are you waiting for? Take him away." "Yes." The members of the Luo family saw that the patriarch's face had darkened, so they quickly went forward to take family head Luo away. The first young master of the Luo family moved his lips but could not say anything in the end. "Everyone, it's not convenient for the Luo family to entertain you. Please leave first." The patriarch of the Luo family said to the family heads of the reclusive families and asked someone to take them away. Thus, they bowed and left with their people. Soon, only the members of the Luo family, Fengjiu, and a few others were left in the large martial arts field. Go and bring the herbs they asked for to the front yard. The patriarch of the Luo family said. Then, he turned to the few of them and said, I'll take you to the 100-herb garden to pick 10 spiritual herbs yourselves. That's more like it. Wouldn't it have been better if you had done this earlier? The patriarch of the Luo family smiled and stroked his beard in satisfaction. He glanced at Fengjiu and Zhuo Junyue. The patriarch of the Luo family glanced at Zhuo Junyue and looked at Fengjiu. He asked, How should I address you? Where did this person come from? Could it be that the young people in the outside world had become so powerful after so many years in seclusion? Fengjiu curled his lips and looked at the patriarch of the Luo family. He said softly, Fengjiu. Fengjiu. He had never heard of this name before. However, he had to find out who this Fengjiu was. He nodded and gestured for them to enter. This way, please. With him personally leading Fengjiu and the others to the 100-herb garden, no one from the Luo clan dared to say anything. They could only hope that they didn't know about spiritual herbs and couldn't recognize the precious herbs in their garden. However, when Fengjiu stepped into the 100-medicine garden, she walked around in a leisurely pace. With a sweep of her gaze, she roughly saw all the medicinal herbs inside. Thus, she picked out 10 rare medicinal herbs that were not in her spiritual medicine space. When the 10 herbs were placed in front of the Luo family's ancestor, the corner of his mouth twitched. He looked at Fengjiu with a strange and pained expression. Young Master Feng knows medicine. I know a thing or two. Fengjiu smiled. He was in a good mood after obtaining 10 rare herbs. He had dug out the 10 most precious and rare spirit herbs in his Luo family's herb garden, yet he only knew a little. The patriarch of the Luo family cursed inwardly. He felt that this young man was as evil as Hunyuan. Fengjiu put the herbs into the spiritual medicine space and walked with them to the hall in the front yard to collect the herbs that Zhuo Junyue needed. It's getting late. Why don't you stay for the night and leave tomorrow? The patriarch of the Luo family asked them. Chapter 2391. Seeing this, the Luo clan's ancestor did not stay any longer. He personally sent them out. After watching them leave his sight, he let out a sigh of relief. He felt as if a huge rock had been lifted from his heart. Not to mention the old man, Fengjiu, the young man's strength was unfathomable. The Luo family could not afford to offend him. Losing a dozen rare spiritual herbs to send him away was better than bringing disaster to the Luo family and implicating the entire family. Seeing him heave a sigh of relief, the first elder asked, Ancestor, do you know the 3 of them? The Luo family's ancestor glanced at him and said in a deep voice, Those 3 are not to be trifled with. Compared to the old man, the young man called Fengjiu is truly unfathomable. He paused and stared at the first elder. As the Luo family's first elder, why didn't you stop him when he made a mistake? Do you know that if this matter is not handled properly, the young man called Fengjiu alone can destroy the entire Luo family? Hearing this, the first elder was shocked, and his face turned pale. Is that young man really that powerful? His strength is definitely above mine, the Luo family's ancestor said in a deep voice and left without saying anything else. Hearing this, the first elder felt cold sweat drench his clothes and a lingering fear surged in his heart. On the other side, after Fengjiu and the others left the Luo family's residence, they spent the night in the forest. When the sun rose the next morning, they left the area on their swords and headed back. That evening, they arrived at a small town and prepared to find a place to rest. After entering the town, Fengjiu said to the 2 of them, You 2 go find an inn first. I'll go to the market and see if there's anything for to eat. Okay, we'll pick the closest place to stay. When the time comes, you'll be fine. The old man said and went to the inn with Zhuo Junyue. Fengjiu, who was carrying a child to the market, attracted many curious gazes. In this place, it was rare for a man to carry a child out, especially a man who was more beautiful than a woman. Do you think this man is a woman dressed as a man? How could there be such a handsome man in the world? You're carrying a child. They do look alike. That appearance is rare even for a woman, let alone a man. Some people on the street were discussing, and some men at the corner of the street stared at Fengjiu, who was wearing green clothes and carrying a child. They held their chins with one hand and looked at her with wretched eyes. Fengjiu bought some snacks in the market and saw someone milking cows and sheep. He went up to buy some freshly squeezed goat milk and went to the tailor shop to buy more than 10 sets of children's clothes. After putting everything into her space, she turned the corner and was about to walk towards the inn when she saw a few ruffians in the alley blocking her way, staring at her maliciously. "Big brother, this kid looks so good. Is he a girl?" A local ruffian asked the person in front of him. How hard is it to find out if it's a man or a woman? Why don't we just grab him and strip him?" The leader of the ruffians smiled wretchedly and said, "But, with this kid's looks, whether he's a man or a woman, he'll definitely fetch a good price." Chapter 2392. The moment the pressure enveloped them, their bodies stiffened and they knelt down with a thud. Their faces were deathly pale and their eyes widened in fear. Beads of cold sweat the size of beads seeped out of their foreheads and dripped down. They watched as the young man walked past them with the child in his arms. He didn't even say a word, but they could feel the aura of death looming over them. When the figure passed by them, they only felt a rush of blood rushing up from below. With a "pu" sound, they spat out mouthfuls of blood and fell down one after another. When Fengjiu arrived at the inn, she saw the old man and Zhuo Junue sitting in the corner of the hall on the first floor. She walked over and took out a few hot scallion pancakes from her space and placed them on the table. "I bought them when I came back. Try them, they taste pretty good." The two of them were drinking tea. When they saw her take out the pancakes, they took a piece and ate it. The old man asked, "Did you find anything for the child to eat?" "Yes, I bought some goat's milk," she said, and asked the two of them, "Have you ordered anything? Have you booked a room?" "We haven't booked a room yet. We just went up to take a look. This inn is relatively small, but it's already full. We're sitting here to wait for you to come over and check out the other inns. We ordered a few signature dishes, but there's nothing for the child to eat." Fengjiu nodded and called the waiter over. She took out a bottle of goat's milk. "Sir, what can I do for you?" The waiter walked over with a smile and poured a cup of tea for Fengjiu. "Bring this goat's milk to your kitchen and heat it up." She flipped her hand and a piece of silver fell into the waiter's hand. "This is for you." When the waiter saw this, he smiled until his eyes narrowed into a line. He quickly nodded and said, "This little one will do it right away." As he said this, he put the silver into his pocket and took the milk to the kitchen. "When we go back, bring your brother to my place. I have plenty of places for him to stay and it'll be easier for me to treat him," Fengjiu said to Zhuo Junue. "All right." He nodded and looked at her, saying, "Thank you. I don't treat you as outsiders, so there's no need to thank me." She smiled and took a sip of tea. Then, she heard the old man's laughter. "Why are you drinking tea in a place like this? Let them serve the wine, we'll have a good meal," he said excitedly and waved for the waiter to serve the wine. Not long after, the dishes and wine were served. Even the goat milk was heated and served. Fengjiu first fed the child, then asked the waiter to bring 2 chairs together and put the child on the chair to sleep. The few of them ate and chatted for a while. When night fell, they found an inn in town to rest. However, in the second half of the night, the 3 people who were sleeping soundly in the room faintly heard some uneasy movements. Because Fengjiu and Hao slept in one room, the old man and Zhuo Junue slept in another. When they heard the movements, Zhuo Junue asked, "Should we go take a look?" The old man slept on the bed on the right. When he heard Zhuo Junue's words, he turned over without opening his eyes and said, "Do you think she's like you? Can't even protect yourself? Go to sleep. These people aren't here for us anyway. Don't meddle in their business." Chapter 2393. In the dead of the night, the cries for help entered his ears. His heart could not calm down. Thus, he lifted the blanket, put on his coat, and walked out. After he went out, the old man shook his head and got up helplessly. Although this old man was not someone who liked to meddle in other people's business, the cries for help did indeed make his heart a mess. It was reasonable to say that he did not have the ability to save people, but he clearly had the ability. If he kept pretending to be asleep, even if no one said anything about it, he would not feel good. Sigh, this old man is kind-hearted. He muttered to himself and went out with his hands behind his back. However, when the two of them came outside, they saw that someone had already arrived outside. That figure was only wearing a white inner garment and a green outer garment. In his arms was a child who did not cry or make a fuss. He just sat on the roof and watched. Fengjiu held Hao, who was blinking his clear eyes and looking around, with one hand supporting his chin as he watched the scene below. The few guards were protecting a pair of 8 or 9-year-old twins. From the twins' clothes, they should be the children of a rich family. In addition to the guards protecting them, there was also an old man guarding by their side. However, after another group of black-clothed men came, the old man was obviously unable to withstand it. Several wounds had already been inflicted on his body by the black-clothed men. The twins were obviously frightened. The two of them hugged each other tightly and curled up at the side. Other than crying, they were shouting for help. However, looking around, no one came out to participate in this kind of thing. Even some of the rooms where the lights were still on turned off after hearing the commotion outside. They did not dare to make a sound. Seeing a black-clothed man's sharp sword slashing towards the two children with a fierce aura, she moved her finger, and a silver needle shot out with a whoosh. The black-clothed man groaned and fell silently. Because of this, the black-clothed men all looked in her direction. "Kid, do you want to die?" A black-clothed man shouted and strode towards her. The hand holding the long sword surged with spiritual power, and a murderous aura pervaded the air. Fengjiu casually glanced at the black-clothed man. With a turn of her finger, 2 more silver needles appeared and attacked as the black-clothed man walked over. The black-clothed man was already prepared and blocked with the long sword in his hand. With a clang, a trace of sparks burst out from the blade. "Ha ha ha. You want to kill me with just a hidden weapon? You are really N." Before the black-clothed man finished speaking, a drop of cinnabar-like blood seeped out from between his eyebrows. Seeing this, one of the twins immediately pulled the person beside him and quickly ran towards Fengjiu. The two of them were obviously also cultivators. Raising their spiritual power aura, they stepped on the breeze and headed towards the roof where Fengjiu was. Seeing this, Fengjiu only raised her eyebrows. Seeing the twins coming towards her, the black-clothed men launched several hidden weapons at her. With a flick of her finger, several strands of spiritual power shot out and repelled the hidden weapons. Ah! Muffled groans and miserable cries sounded and 2 more black-clothed men fell. Seeing this scene, the old man who was injured protecting the children glanced at Fengjiu and loudly said, "Many thanks to young master for saving us." Chapter 2394. When the old man and Zhuo Junjiu saw this scene, the former stroked his beard and smiled, while the latter's gaze fell on Fengjiu. Those who were more powerful did not want to get involved in these matters. However, ever since they met Fengjiu, she had never lost her kindness. As long as she felt that she should save someone, she would help regardless of whether she knew them or not. This was very rare for someone with her cultivation. The twins came to Fengjiu's side, but they didn't dare to get too close. They just stood about a meter away from her and looked at her. Seeing that she didn't respond, the twins looked down. Seeing that the old man and his guards were covered in wounds, Fengjiu glanced at Zhuo Junyue. Didn't you come out to help? What are you waiting for? Hearing this, Zhuo Junyue stretched out his hand. With a flash of light, a sharp longsword appeared in his hand. Like a dragon, he swept past and joined the battle. Seeing that there were indeed experts among the black-clothed men, Han Yuanzi also stepped in to help. With the help of the two, the situation was quickly reversed. The remaining black-clothed men were no match for the black-clothed men. Seeing that the situation was not good, they quickly retreated with their injuries. With the crisis averted, the old man bowed to Fengjiu and the others. Thank you for saving us, benefactors. The remaining two guards stood behind the old man and bowed to them. Thank you, benefactors. The two children knelt because they knew that if Fengjiu and the others had not come out to save them, they would not have survived. I didn't save you. I was just woken up by the noise. As Fengjiu spoke, she stood up with the children in her arms and walked down, preparing to return to her room to rest. Seeing this, the twins were stunned and did not know what to do. When the old man saw that the three of them had turned to return to their room, he opened his mouth to say something, but in the end, he did not say anything. He only let the two children down after watching them disappear from his sight. Bandage your wounds, the old man said to the two guards. The old man said to the two guards. He glanced at the corpse on the ground and asked them to clean it up. Only then did he bring the two children into the inn. Second grandpa, are we not leaving now? Will those people who stayed here come again? The two children asked with lingering fear in their eyes. No, they won't dare to come tonight. You two go back to your room and have a good sleep. Second grandpa is here, don't worry. The old man comforted them, his wrinkled hands gently patting the two children's heads. Hearing the old man's words, the two children nodded and entered the inn without another word. After the old man brought the two of them back to their rooms to rest, he came out and stood guard outside the door. He looked thoughtfully at the other two rooms, and no one knew what he was thinking. He waited outside the guest room for a long time. In the end, he got the two guards to guard the guest room while he went to a room that was still lit and knocked on the door. Benefactors. In the room, Hao was sleeping on the bed. Fengjiu and the others were not sleepy because they had been woken up in the middle of the night, so they drank tea and chatted. As they were talking, they heard a knock on the door and the old man's voice. Chapter 2395. Zhuo Junyue stood up and opened the door. As soon as the door was opened, the old man bowed to Zhuo Junyue before kneeling down in front of Fengjiu. His voice trembled slightly as he spoke with a trace of helplessness in his aged voice, "Young master, please save us." Seeing this, the three people in the room fell silent. Han Yuanzi glanced at the old man. This old man had the strength of a celestial sage. Among the black-clothed men tonight, there were also celestial sages. However, to his surprise, the old man's eyesight was so good that he could see that among the three of them, Fengjiu was the strongest. Fengjiu leaned back with a leisurely expression. She played with the cup on the table with one hand and asked casually, "Aren't you still alive and well? What's there to save? We were saved by young master and are now alive. However, if young master leaves, we will definitely be intercepted and killed on the way." The old man's eyes were filled with tears as he said, "I'm old and my death is not to be regretted. However, these two children are the only remaining seedlings of my Bai family. My Bai family risked their lives to protect them and help them escape. They are the last hope of our Bai family. I beg young master to save these two children and let them safely reach 100 Rivers City to find their sister." When Fengjiu heard the old man say that they were from the Bai family, she raised her eyebrows slightly as a thought flashed through her mind. However, it was only a thought that arose because of his words. Even she shook her head inwardly, thinking that there was no such thing as a coincidence in this world. But who would have thought that when she heard the last part about finding their sister in Hundred Rivers City, she couldn't help but look deeply at the old man and ask, "You say you are from the Bai family? You want to take these two children to Hundred Rivers City to find their sister?" "Yes, I am the second grandfather of these two children. The two children are twins and are also the youngest sons of our Bai family's patriarch. The older one is called Bai Yunqi and the younger one is called Bai Yunlin. Their sister is called Bai Qingqing. For some reason, she is now following the ghost doctor of Heavenly Pill House in Hundred Rivers City." At this point, the old man's voice was filled with sorrow. He lowered his head, so he didn't see Fengjiu and Huanyuan's expressions. The Bai clan was annihilated. Now, the only people left in the Bai clan are me, these two children, and Qingqing, who is by the side of the ghost doctor of the Heavenly Dan building in the Hundred River City. I beg young master to protect us. As long as we can safely send the two children to the Heavenly Dan building to meet their elder sister and obtain the ghost doctor's protection, I am willing to work like a horse for the rest of my life to repay young master. After saying this, he respectfully kowtowed to Fengjiu. Fengjiu stared blankly at the old man who was kowtowing. He didn't ask the old man to get up and just stared at him quietly. She did not expect that she would save Bai Qingqing's younger brothers. She did not know anything about Bai Qingqing's family and did not ask anyone to investigate after the incident. She did not expect that her family would be wiped out. The Bai family was also a big family in the area, and it was a family with some foundation. How could it be suddenly exterminated? Moreover, this news probably hasn't spread yet. Otherwise, it would definitely cause a commotion. If it had nothing to do with her, it would be one thing. But now, she knew that these people were from the Bai family and were more or less related to her. Now that the Bai family had been wiped out and only these few people were left, it would be unreasonable if she didn't help. Chapter 2396. Hearing this, the old man raised his head to look at Fengjiu in surprise and thanked him happily. "Thank you, young master, thank you." Zhou Junue sent the old man out and closed the door again. When he returned to the table, he saw the old man stroking his beard and staring at Fengjiu. "I thought you didn't like that Bai Qingqing. Why are you still thinking of helping the Bai family? Do I not like her?" Fengjiu glanced at him and said, "I let her work in the Heavenly Pill dispensary just to dampen her spirit. I haven't seen her for a year, and now that I've returned, she's much more pleasing to the eye than she was in the Heavenly Sun sect." She paused and took a sip of tea. "Besides, didn't you hear that the Bai family was exterminated? There are only a few seedlings left. Since her sister is one of my subordinates, I will naturally help if I can. Anyway, I have nothing better to do along the way with the two of you. It's good for me to stretch my limbs and stretch my muscles." Hearing this, the old man's mouth twitched slightly. Zhou Junue did not say anything and just drank his tea as if he did not hear her. The three of them drank tea and chatted for a while in the room, then went to rest. The next morning, the second master of the Bai family, who had been waiting for Fengjiu and the others, did not see them come down. He asked them again and again to confirm that they had not left. Only then did he relax and wait on the first floor. The old man and Zhou Junue got up first and strolled around the inn. Only Fengjiu slept until noon and woke up to the child's cries. After feeding the baby and changing his diaper, she carried the baby downstairs. Seeing that the people on the first floor were already sitting there, eating and chatting, she walked over. "You're awake. I asked the waiter to cook some porridge for you. Eat some and feed the child some." The old man said and waved for the waiter to bring the porridge up. "Young master." The second master of the Bai family cupped his hands and bowed to Fengjiu. "Young master." The two children followed their second master's example and bowed to Fengjiu. "Take a seat. Just order whatever you want, and take some food with you on the way." We don't stop often, she said, motioning them to sit down, and she sat down with the baby in her arms. Although Fengjiu asked them to sit down and eat together, second master Bai didn't dare to let the two children sit on the same level as her, so he took them to another table and said to Fengjiu, "We just ate and prepared some dry food for the road." Seeing this, Fengjiu didn't say anything else. After feeding the child some food, he also ate some himself. The group then set off for 100 River City. On the way, when they passed by a certain city, they stopped for a moment. Fengjiu left for a while and found the business center of her forces in the city. She told them to investigate the Bai family and then send the news back to the Heavenly Dan building. However, just as Fengjiu went into the city and Hun Yuanzi and the others were waiting for her outside the city, a group of black-robed men suddenly appeared and surrounded them. Hun Yuanzi couldn't help but stroke his beard and squint when he saw that the 30 black-robed men were all above the fairy realm. There were even a few celestial saints among them. TSK, they really know how to pick the time. Moreover, there are quite a lot of people here. Look at their strength, even I am a little scared when I see them. Chapter 2397. Old man, it's best if you don't meddle in other people's business, lest you get into trouble. The leader of the black-robed men said in a low voice, his gloomy gaze landing on Hun Yuanzi. Ha! You've been following us all the way. Do you think I don't know? Hun Yuanzi sneered and glanced at those people. If you know what's good for you, you'd better leave quickly. Otherwise, I'm sure that none of you will be able to leave in the end. How arrogant. As soon as the gloomy voice fell, an attack hand gesture was made. The surrounding black-robed men drew their swords and flew forward. Kill them. The gloomy voice carried a sharp killing intent. As soon as it fell, the killing intent in the air spread, enveloping the entire sky. Under the powerful pressure and killing intent, the two children could not resist and spat out a trace of blood. Seeing this, the second master, who was protecting them, quickly formed a defensive barrier to protect them. 30 people surrounded them. Fortunately, Hun Yuanzi's strength was not weak, and Zhuo Juanyue's movements were agile. Otherwise, the Bai family would have died at the hands of these people. As the battle was taking place outside the city gates, it attracted the attention of many people. However, those people did not dare to come close. Ordinary people retreated back into the city, but some cultivators watched from not far away from the city gates. 30 people are surrounding and attacking these people. In my opinion, they won't be able to survive. That's not necessarily true. That old man is very strong, and the other man's movements are not ordinary either. The old man at the side is protecting the two children, but he can't protect them all. Those black-robed men are really arrogant. They actually dare to attack in broad daylight here. These black-clothed men are all very strong. Look, the weakest among them is at the fairy realm. With such strength, they would be among the top figures in the city. Moreover, there are more than 30 of them. I wonder what these people did to provoke such a group of people. It seems like it will be difficult for them to survive. Those cultivators discussed in low voices and did not see that behind them, a green figure was slowly walking over with a child in her arms. She heard those people's words and saw the scene in front of her. When she saw that second master Bai was slashed several times for protecting the two children, her eyes flashed. She handed the children in her hands to the steward behind her and flashed out. The steward carried the child and watched as his master rushed out and joined the battle. He opened his mouth and was about to say something, wondering if he should go back and call for help. Then, he saw a terrifying aura spread out in an instant. That powerful and terrifying pressure instantly slowed down everyone's movements. Some people even stiffened their bodies and were unable to move. It was as if there were pairs of hands in the air that were tightly holding them down. In just an instant, they saw a green figure flash past them. Before they could even see who it was, they felt a pain in their throats. Warm blood spurted out from their necks and splashed onto their hands. At that moment, everyone's eyes widened in shock and horror. Under the black cloth, they all opened their mouths in disbelief. They wanted to shout out, but they couldn't make a single sound. Chapter 2398. The green robe fluttered in the wind as the green figure stood firm. The surrounding black-robed men collapsed one by one. This scene stunned the people at the city gate. Some of them were so shocked by the scene that their legs turned to jelly and they almost knelt down. Some of them widened their eyes and swallowed their saliva. They could only hear their hearts thumping wildly. Such an impossible thing actually happened right in front of them. This green-robed man, who exactly was he? How could he kill over 30 experts in an instant? They could only hear the rumbling echoes in their ears. Their minds were blank, and they could only see the green figure in front of them. Hun Yuanzi and Zhua Junyuan knew that she was very powerful and had no problem killing these people. Therefore, they were not surprised that she could kill them in an instant. However, the second master of the Bai family was dumbfounded. He completely forgot that his wounds were still bleeding. He only knew that it was a wise decision for him to ask this young master to protect him along the way. If it wasn't for him, they probably wouldn't have survived. Feng Jiu glanced at the corpses on the ground and saw that Zhua Junyue had already collected all the valuables on their bodies with familiarity. Over 30 Qianquan bags and over 30 interspatial rings were all placed in front of her. The items are all here. Zhua Junyue passed the items to her. He knew that she would definitely want more after killing them. Although these people did not have much to take from them, there were still many valuable items. Especially at this level of power, there would be even more treasures in the space. Seeing him pass the items to her, she narrowed her eyes and revealed an appreciative smile. Not bad. You're getting more and more familiar with what I want to do. She praised him as she took the items and kept them in the space. However, with a turn of her hand, she took out a bag of gold coins and looked at the rogue cultivators around her. I need a few people to deal with these corpses. Is there anyone willing to help? Me. When the rogue cultivators heard her, they immediately raised their hands and shouted. Even if there was no reward, it was only right for such a powerhouse to work for him. Moreover, a powerhouse who could kill so many powerhouses in an instant was definitely qualified for them to do such a thing. Seeing this, Feng Jiu threw the money bag to them. Divide it. Thank you, Venerable One. A few rogue cultivators smiled happily and immediately moved the corpses away. At this moment, the steward who was carrying the child walked up to Feng Jiu and returned the child to her. Master, the young master is here. Feng Jiu took it and said to him. You can go back first. Do what I asked you to do immediately. Yes, I'll do it right away. The steward bowed respectfully before returning to the city. On the other side, Hun Yuanzi looked at the second master and said. If you continue to bleed like this, you won't be able to make it to 100 Rivers City alive. Okay, I will do it immediately, right now. The second master came back to his senses and took out medicine and a strip of cloth to treat the wound. After today's battle, 2 guards had died here. Now, only the 3 of them were left. Chapter 2399. You're both men. How can you be so afraid when you're hugging each other like this? Are you going to hide behind someone else when you encounter something in the future? After the 2 children heard her words, their bodies clearly trembled and they lowered their heads, not knowing what to do. Let's go. From now on, let the 2 of them fly on their own. As soon as she finished speaking, she threw out the rainbow-glazed feather and jumped on it with in her arms. Seeing this, Hun Yuanzi and Zhua Junyue also flew on their weapons. Second Master Bai looked at the 2 children with some worry and encouraged them, it's okay. Second Master is here. You can fly on your own. Second master will guard behind you. When the two children heard this, they nodded. They also had flying magic tools, so they took them out and used their spiritual power to fly. Because their speed was not fast, they could only barely follow behind Fengjiu and the others. On the way to 100 River City's heavenly pill building, Fengjiu intentionally or unintentionally trained the two children to learn how to be independent. From the initial timidity and fear in their hearts to the end, they were calm and fearless. It could be said that this journey was not long, but it allowed the two children, who were 7 or 8 years old, to quickly grow up. Halfway, Shui Junyue and Fengjiu went their separate ways. They first went to the family clan, while Fengjiu and Han Yuanzi brought the Bai family to 100 River City. This is 100 River City. You can chat while flying on your weapons. This journey isn't very far, right? Han Yuanzi smiled as he looked at the Bai family members. Because of the disaster that had befallen their families, it was difficult for them to relax. However, when they saw him smiling and asking, Second Master Bai also smiled and nodded. Fortunately, we have the two of you protecting us along the way. Otherwise, I'm afraid we wouldn't be here now. After those people lost more than 30 experts, they didn't send anyone to chase after us. I think they won't appear in a short period of time, especially after arriving at the Heavenly Pill Building. You can rest assured that in the Heavenly Pill Building, no one will dare to attack the Ghost Doctor's people in her territory. Han Yuanzi smiled and comforted them, telling them not to worry too much. However, after hearing Han Yuanzi's words, Second Master Bai's face was filled with worry. I'm afraid that it's difficult for the Ghost Doctor to take in Qingqing's two younger brothers. After all, I heard that Qingqing did something very rude to the Ghost Doctor. I'm afraid. Don't worry too much, don't worry too much. That Ghost Doctor isn't that petty. Han Yuanzi waved his hand with a smile and looked at Fengjiu with narrowed eyes. Don't you think so? Hearing the conversation between the two, Fengjiu Yuan did not interrupt. Now seeing the old man squinting at her with a smile, she could not help but raise her eyebrows, glanced at the Bai second master and the two children, and said, if the Ghost Doctor does not take them in, what are you going to do? Fengjiu looked away and her gaze fell on the front. She slowly said, the Heavenly Pill Building is in front. When the two children heard Fengjiu's words, their eyes lit up and they couldn't help but ask, young master, does that mean we can see elder sister? Yes, your elder sister works in the Heavenly Pill Building. Fengjiu said without turning her head. Chapter 2400. They hadn't seen their sister for a long time, and now that their closest relatives were right in front of them, the two 7 or 8-year-old children were so excited that they felt sad along the way that they started to run quickly towards the Heavenly Pill Building. In the building, Bai Qingqing was greeting the guests when she saw two small figures running in from outside and pouncing on her. Sister! They called out in unison, and everyone in the Heavenly Pill Building looked at them. Yang Xiao, who was at the side, saw the two children hugging Bai Qingqing and calling out to their sister. After taking a look, he walked forward and said to the guest, young masterly, please come in. What medicine did you say you wanted just now? I'll get it for you. The man glanced at Bai Qingqing and nodded. He said to Yang Xiao, then I'll have to trouble you, Miss Yang. Then, he followed Yang Xiao, inside. Bai Qingqing glanced at Yang Xiao, who was leading the guests away. Then, she squatted down and looked at her two younger brothers. She asked, why are you here? Who brought you here? Why would father let you come to such a faraway place? Hearing their sister's questions, the two 7 or 8-year-old children could not help but tear up. Sister, our family is gone. Father is gone too. Uncle and the others are gone too. Sob 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 sob. At the mention of this sad matter, the two of them could not help but stand there and wipe their tears. When Bai Qingqing heard this, her body trembled. What happened? Why did you say that our family is gone? What's going on? Ching. Second Master Bai walked in from outside and looked at Bai Ching, who was squatting beside the two children and hugging them. Second Grandpa. Seeing him, Bai Ching's face gradually turned pale. This was because Second Grandpa was guarding the family treasure. He did not go out easily. Now, he was actually here. Second Grandpa, what happened in the clan? She asked in a trembling voice. The white Second Master sighed softly, it's a long story, let me tell you in detail later. Come, thank this young master first. If it wasn't for him protecting us all the way to the Heavenly Pill building, I'm afraid we would have been intercepted and killed on the way, not to mention bringing your brothers to see you. Second Master Bai turned around and looked at the green figure who was slowly walking over with the child in his arms. He asked Bai Ching to step forward and thank him. Bai Ching was stunned when she saw the figure. She mumbled, Master. What master? Second Master Bai was stunned for a moment and didn't react. Second Grandpa, she is my master. She is also the owner of the Heavenly Pill House, Ghost Dr. Fengjiu. As Bai Ching spoke, her beautiful eyes looked at the figure in green with an indifferent expression. She had an indescribable feeling in her heart. Was it Mistress who protected her two younger brothers and second grandfather to come here safely? Was it Master who saved her family? She immediately knelt down and respectfully kowtowed to Fengjiu. Ching thanks Master. Thank you for saving Ching's family. Although she didn't know what had happened, since second grandpa said so, Master must have saved them from danger on the way. Bai Ching would never forget this great kindness. Fengjiu walked in with the child in his arms. He glanced at Bai Ching on the ground and second Master Bai who was stunned. He said, bring your second grandpa and brothers to the backyard to talk. As he spoke, he walked past them. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.